Well, hello and welcome. We just had a little technical issue there because it wouldn't be an oddcast without a little technical issue right at the very, very start. Carls, did you press a button that hid the intro and turned the screen purple? Was that you?
Maybe.
Yeah, just maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. When I say touch nothing, I mean touch nothing. You do not touch the things.
I didn't know we were already live, and I was trying to change the thumbnail picture because it's last week's, and I was like, I'll just change that quickly. And then anyway.
Newsflash, we were already live and you made the countdown disappear. And now I feel like I'm not ready. I needed that extra 20 seconds of countdown. I need just to be psychologically prepared.
Well, this is going to be a shit podcast.
Isn't it?
Sorry, friends.
It really feels that way, doesn't it? Doesn't it? And it's an amazing. I was reflecting on this earlier today. Earlier in last week, we were having fun mucking around with, Two Girls, One Cup and all that. And if for those of you that are just tuning in for the first time, you don't know about that, don't watch last week's Wednesday's oddcast. It's traumatic for all involved.
It went off the rails.
And we get to have a lot of fun doing what we do, but also we have a responsibility is not the right word, but we can't have our cake and eat it too. We can't be here to enjoy and discuss the fun stuff and to riff on the things that we want to, and then go missing in action when there are serious conversations to be had, when people are hurting, when people need a bit of community. So I guess this is kind of the other side of it, isn't it? Is when people see something go viral because Abby Chatfield said something silly, they go, oh, I wonder what Carl's is going to say about that. But on the flip side, when they see something like what went down yesterday, they also think, well, I wonder what Carl's or I wonder what Topher are going to have to say about that. So here we are. But forgive us if we're not quite our usual jovial selves.
Just on that, there is no right or wrong way to react to these things. I think back to the first time something like this happened in my life. It was September 11, and I was 14, and my brother and I watched the second plane hit the tower. And I remember in that moment, like, just for the first time in my life, feeling utterly terrified because I didn't know what to do. And I remember the next morning, people were trying to be normal, right? Because no one knew what do we do? How do we react? And everyone was desperate for information. And I remember sitting on the school bus going to school, and normally it's really ruckus. Everyone's like yelling and talking and, there's music or whatever. You could hear a pin drop. Yeah. And then we got to school, and the teachers too didn't know. No one knew how to react. No one knew what to say.
Yeah.
And then contrast to what has happened in the last 25 years, I don't want to say this is regular, but we are all too conditioned and desensitized to these kind of things.
Yeah.
And I think people still seem to fail to gather that regardless who you think did it or who's at fault or what political ideology or religion is behind it, there are 15 people that were murdered yesterday.
Yeah.
And those people deserve their moment to be mourned, firstly, by their loved ones.
Yeah.
And Australians at large, people of Bondi who escaped the terror, they deserve their moment to feel the fear and to reconcile just what happened before everyone jumps down their throat with conspiracy theories and it gets politicized. And you and I are, we're in the noise as well.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
We're contributing. But I think every single person, those of you on the chat, those of you on socials right now, just keep that at the forefront of your mind. You don't have to agree with these people. You don't have to like their religion either way, shape or form. But a 12-year-old girl was full of bullets yesterday.
Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. That shit hurts.
Yeah. Yeah. And it should hurt. That's the thing. It's healthy. That is the healthy response. But you're right. It's shocking, but it's not at all surprising to see this happen.
Apparently she was 10. Sorry if I got that wrong.
Yeah, she was 10. Yeah. I didn't want to correct you because it's like it's a trivial, not trivial, but it's like 10 or 12. Like honestly, your point still stands.
Child.
Yeah. But I reflect on the last 2 years where we've seen, the dancing and the chants of "Gas the Jews" on the steps of the Sydney Opera House. We saw marches across Sydney Harbour Bridge. We saw basically weekly demonstrations in Melbourne with significant amounts of lawlessness, etc. And one of the things that I've said relentlessly all the way through this is we need to treat individuals as individuals. We can't be going for groups, but we need to treat individuals as individuals. And one of my gripes in all of this is that we haven't been doing that. We're allowed to believe people when they say things. When an individual says, we want to kill all Jews, we're allowed to go, we believe that you mean that when you say that, and we're allowed to act accordingly as a society. The younger of the two, so this is allegedly, a father and a son. We've all seen the videos. The son was known to ASIO. But the real question mark that I have is the father was on, as I understand it, I've seen different reports, so maybe viewers help me out. I've seen it reported as a tourist visa, and I've seen it reported as a student visa that he was studying, but that I'm not sure which is correct. But in either case, how do you end up with a gun license when you're not an Australian citizen or at least a permanent resident? So there's things in there that I'm quite confused about. And at the moment, the media is kind of not helping. They're just saying, this thing. They're just repeating whatever the police or the government have said. And at the moment, no one's really asking some of those questions yet. I've got some unanswered questions around that side of the narrative. But if we've got people, and we've got people standing up in mosques every week saying, we need to bring the Intifada to Australia. We're allowed to believe you when you say that, right? We're not obliged to give you the benefit of the doubt. We're allowed to say, you know what? We think maybe you actually mean that and that you're making threats against people. And I've talked about before, libertarian free speech absolutism does not extend to actual threats of actual violence against people. If it is reasonable for a person to be in fear, then you have crossed a threshold. I've been consistent on that. I've talked about that in videos before. So there are people who should have been dealt with as individuals. And the point was made last week, I think it was, when I was blathering on about something and I couldn't quite put my words together, and someone in the comments made a beautiful, if you deal with the individuals, the groups don't form, right? And I think, unfortunately, we've got such a clear example of that now. We never dealt with the individuals who are coming out and saying things that do cross that line, that are actually incitement to violence. And I mean, I can say that I'm an expert on incitement. I got charged with it, all right? I know what I'm talking about when it comes to incitement. There are people inciting actual real violence. And what we're being told by our authorities is, they don't really mean it. We're not going to take any action. We don't actually think that they mean what they say. That's not what the words that they're using, but that's essentially what they're saying to us in the fact that they're not taking any action. And I would hope to see, we're going to see a lot more. I would hope that we're going to see a lot more action against those people, because it's warranted.
I think there's a couple of, we say this nearly every podcast, but two things can be true at once. And the first thing I want to say is that to anyone who is Muslim watching this right now, and I know there are definitely a few of you, I do not hate Muslims. But if we are not allowed to have the conversation about extremism that exists in the Muslim faith, then you are doing yourselves a disservice, okay? I've had a handful of Muslims reach out to me in my DMs and say, Carly, this is coming across really hateful. And I said, which part? The honesty? And I think this is why I get frustrated. And I struggle with this role that I have in this podcast. I have this moniker of Spicy Carls because I do get a little bit worked up at times. And a lot of the times that is a little bit in jest. And it is, I lean into it at times.
Sure.
But I've also been attacked in the comments for being emotional. And my issue here, and the reason I bring this up before we start getting into this, is at what point are you allowed to be emotional about what's going in your country?
Yeah.
Today I have seen a whole host of people, because everyone had to rush to put noise out there, myself included. Okay, I understand my role in this. Tofu put up a video too.
Yeah.
But in everyone's rush to get their voices heard, we are seeing a whole host of people going, now's not the time to have this discussion. No, it's Islamophobic to even talk about this. To which I say, every time you take away our opportunity to speak,
Yeah.
You force us to become more radicalized. And what that looks like is the NSN. What that looks like is the ultra progressive lefties, and they are the same thing.
Yep, they are the same thing.
The fundamentalist Islamist is exactly the same as the super woke person. They are the
Yep.
same people. And
Yep.
I've seen so many calls today, and this is the bit that really boiled my blood. I've seen so many calls today of people going, we need to come together. This is where we unite. We need to stand together. To which I say, I cannot, and I will not stand in arms with people who hate me. I cannot be quiet when I know that the opposite side doesn't just disagree with me. They want me dead. And I'm not just talking about the Islamists. I'm talking about the progressive leftists, your Abby Chatfields, your Clementine Fords, who want us eradicated. These people, there is no reconciliation. I can reconcile with someone like you, Topher, who has a totally different stance on immigration to me. I can reconcile with your traditional liberal who's like, I think we should take in people from war zones. These are people I can have a conversation with. But anyone that thinks that their opposition should die, and again, let's take it away from Bondi for 2 seconds, because it happened about a month ago, or 2 months ago now, when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Remember the lady with the red crazy hair? Called him a human water fountain, and a whole host of people came out to celebrate Charlie Kirk's death.
Yeah.
I can't reconcile with people like that, Topher. I won't. These people have hate in their heart.
Yeah. And this is, you're spot on. And I was going to make a point, and you've made it for me. Have you ever seen that? There's a diagram that goes around. This will be the version that most people will have seen if they've seen it at all. And it is, on the one hand, you've got all the whole population is kind of in a big blob there. And the top part is the rich people. And there's kind of a line dividing, and it says below the rich line, the good people, and then above the rich line is evil people. Right. And the caption is, this is what they want you to believe. And then the alternative is the same block with the same slice of rich people, but now the line is vertical. Right. There's evil people that are in the poor category. There's evil people that are in the rich category. There's, and dividing rich versus poor is a simplification that means that you can't actually deal with the real problem. And one of the things that's going to happen in this moment, we need to have a conversation about Islamic extremism. Clearly, this is Islamic extremism, and clearly that is a problem that has been allowed to fester for far too long. And again, we need to identify and deal with the individuals that are getting involved with that. And I do have a lot to say on that, which we'll get to. But we also need to recognize that the principle of, hey, we can't be friends with these people. We can't reconcile with these people. If you're an Islamic fundamentalist, an Islamic extremist, you believe that Jews should die simply because they're Jews, that people like me should die because I'm never going to convert to Islam, and I'm going to oppose Islamic law in Australia. If you think that violence is the answer, that death is part of the progress, which, by the way, Stalin also believed that death was progress. We will fill the streets with blood, and if we've still got enemies, we'll just keep killing until we have a utopia. If we don't have a utopia yet, it's because we haven't killed enough people yet. Mao Zedong, he had his killing fields, but more so his was starvation, mismanagement, 40 plus million people dying through famine and mismanagement. He didn't care. That was Stalin. That was Stalin as well. But
both of them.
Yeah, you're correct. They had the Great Famine in China. If you view death as a step towards your objective, the death of your enemy is a step towards your objective, then no, we're under no obligation to make peace with you, and that's true no matter which particular creed you may hold on to. Now, let me come back, if I may, to Baz the Dark Horse's comment here. Don't tolerate the libertarian bullshit on immigration. Not today. Look, Baz, I don't know if we're going to have a big bounty about immigration today. We've both said our piece, but this doesn't change my stance, which is we have to treat individuals as individuals. And if we actually start doing that, then these sorts of people, we shouldn't be hearing, he was known to ASIO. That's nonsense. We're not treating people as individuals. We're not listening to the individuals that are inciting violence and going, hey, you said that thing and I think you mean it. We don't have to tar the entire group. We need to deal with the individuals. You mentioned earlier, Carly, that you've got people in your comments kind of saying, that seems a bit hateful. That seems, you were saying that if we were allowed to have this conversation about Muslims, about Islamic extremism specifically, then that would help to defuse things. Not having this conversation is making things worse. That's absolutely true. But I've got a friend who's senior in Victoria anti-terror. He is involved in de-radicalization and de-escalation of Islamic terrorists. And he's now he's been across sort of both sides. So the rise of the NSN has been in his portfolio as well. But one of the things that he's shared with me is that he talks to imams all the time who are in despair because they're saying, we're telling you about the people that we're identifying in our mosque that we're concerned about, and you're telling us that we're the bad guys for bringing this up. We're trying to weed out the bad apples in our own. Now, this is not universal to every imam. There are some imams that are a problem themselves, but there are imams out there that want to practice a Muslim faith that isn't the extremist version, that isn't the violent version, that doesn't involve killing as a means to an end. And when they try and weed out the problem people in their flocks, they're not actually getting the support that they need. So I think there is an argument to say that if we tar every single Muslim with this brush of, oh, you all want us to die, well, unfortunately, we are going to actually push away the support. And right now, it's not the moderate Muslims that are the problem. It's actually the bleeding heart whites. It's the bleeding heart prime ministers and premiers and foreign ministers and the bleeding hearts in government at all levels, state and federal, that are actually stopping even Muslims from being able to have a serious conversation about violent people among their ranks. So yeah, you're right. This is a conversation we have to have, but I wouldn't go so far as to say that this is a conversation that Muslim people are stopping us from having. That's not my observation.
I'm going to disagree with you, just based on what I've experienced the last 24 hours. I've been called all sorts of heinous names, obviously racist, Islamophobe.
Sure.
And to which I'll say a phobia stipulates a fear of something. I don't fear the Muslim community. I don't fear Islam itself. I denounce it, and I see time and time again, whether it's in Australia, in the UK, in Canada, in America, that so many egregious acts of hateful violence stems from people who will firstly yell Allah Akbar, and then it always comes back to a radicalized Islamist. Those things can be true at the same time. Those people exist, and there's good Muslims. But if I say that radical Islamists are predominantly the people who participate in terrorist attacks, that does not equal me saying all Muslims are bad. And this
correct.
Bizarre world that we live in, if you say this thing, it means you must mean this thing, is ridiculous. And I'll give you another example. And this did come from a wokey. And if anyone saw my Instagram stories, I think they're still there. They may have expired by now. But I posted a screenshot of me replying to one of these woke people. And I need to say this. I don't owe you polite. If you're coming to me and thinking, oh, she's a public figure, she'll be careful with the way she speaks. She's not going to say, fuck off, because she has to be better. You're picking the wrong girl. I don't take money from anyone. I'm not restricted by how I react. I don't adhere to some professional code. If you're in my DMs accusing me of being a racist or a xenophobe or an Islamophobe and then telling me that I don't get to have my opinion, I will tell you to fuck off. And I will post it on my stories. I don't hesitate. But this person was in my DM saying that, oh, I noticed that you've been very quiet on domestic violence. P.S. I've never spoken to this person before. Do you know how I know this?
Sure.
I can go through our message history. There's been no conversation before. And I can also click on something that tells me how long that person had been following me. So that person had been following me less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
And they're in my DM saying, oh, I noticed you're really quiet on domestic violence. How many white men have killed women this year in this country?
Yeah.
I cannot stand this whataboutism. I will not fucking tolerate it.
Yeah.
One thing over there does not mean we can't talk about what happened yesterday. And this is how the conversation always gets diluted. Or something else pops up. Oh, well, you didn't speak about that. Oh, well, you didn't speak about this. Yesterday on Bondi Beach, it was the worst terrorist attack that has occurred in our country. I guess you could say since Port Arthur, but that wasn't a terrorist attack. That was a fucking deranged person. And we're not allowed to speak about it. Well, with everyone.
Let's not go there, but depending on who you talk to,
my point is, it's the worst thing that's happened collectively for our nation.
Yeah.
And we can't talk about it because these people are expecting us to have this laundry list of things that we've addressed first. And if you dare speak about this thing, you can't talk about that thing. It's ridiculous. And I just have no time for this crap.
So the way I deal with people like that, because I get them from time to time as well, oh, what about, and it's often domestic violence. That seems to be a big one. And it's also, genocide in Gaza. Like that'll be the other one that they go to. And my response is always, let's take the domestic violence one. Let's take the one that they've given you. Is to respond and say, I notice you've been really quiet about car crashes recently. How many women have been killed in car crashes? More than have died in domestic violence. Oh, I notice you've been really quiet about cancer recently. How many women have died from cancer? More than died in car crashes. Oh, I notice you've been really quiet about heart disease recently. How many women have died of heart disease? Oh, more than died from cancer. Like, if you want to play this escalation game, then the only thing we're allowed to talk about is whichever thing happens to be at the very, very top of the totem pole right now. And I do that, and it pisses them off. Like oh, that's a false equivalence. It's a blah blah blah. It's like, that's exactly the same equivalence as what you made, mate. And they usually fuck off after that. But I think you're right to have, you don't owe anyone a moment of your time. This is the tension of the relationship that we have with our viewers. Is obviously the only reason what we do is relevant is because of our viewers. And it's a really funny relationship, because if we sucked and we had nothing to say and we never said anything of any value, then no one would watch, and we would get that signal pretty quickly, right? But people do watch, and on the one hand, we're only relevant because people watch. On the other hand, people only watch because we're relevant. So there's kind of this symbiotic relationship that happens. But what we've seen happen, and I think it's happened with a couple of these really high-profile American podcasters and things, is they ultimately become captured by their audience. They lose sight of the fact that people listened to them because of what they had to say, because it was challenging, because it was different, because it was something. There was something about what they said or how they said it. And then they end up sitting there going, oh, what can I say that's going to make my audience happy? And that's such a dangerous, it's this role reversal. The cart leads the horse, the tail wags the dog. And so I think it's really important actually to kind of have this ambivalence towards your own audience's outrage. Because if you start to care too much, and people get pissed off by that, they're like, oh, I've supported you for how long? Okay, that's nice. I appreciate it. But that doesn't mean that I owe you nice. That doesn't actually mean that I have to have some relationship with you. You're free to stop watching anytime you want.
I'm not your puppet.
Yeah, I'm not, and I'm nobody's puppet. And the reason why people watch me and you, we have no advertisers, we have no sponsors, we have no lobby groups or anyone paying us anything. There's literally nothing. If you guys don't buy me a coffee and buy some merch and buy Carl's AI masterclass, we don't make money. We don't get anything. And on the one hand, that gives us tremendous freedom, because we don't have anyone threatening to pull their funding, pull their ads, and anything like that. On the other hand, it means we have to be doubly guarded against the potential for audience capture, because that is how we pay our bills. And so there's kind of this double thing. And in moments like this, it would be very, very easy to jump on all the right outrage things, say all the right things, and say them all the right way. I'll give you an example from today. I uploaded that video that you mentioned earlier. So I uploaded a video to YouTube, and in that video, I say some things that you're not supposed to say. And surprise, surprise, the video took off, which is nice. I don't make videos in order to have them take off, but it's always nice when they do. I'm just pulling up the figures here. So can you see? So you can see the spike there on the screen. That's the views taking off when I released today's video about the Bondi massacre. And then YouTube turned around and restricted the video, and you can see that the views collapse right down. So normally when a video does that well, it's going to take off and go for a long time. That should be a 250,000, 500,000 view video. It got collapsed straight back down again, down to normal levels. So even though people want to watch it, YouTube has said, we don't want people to watch this. If I'd have said the right things and said it the right way, I wouldn't have had that restriction. And so other creators that are just more cynically focused on how do I get clicks, how do I get views, they play within the boundaries a lot more, and they'll get the views, they'll get the reward, they'll get the growth, they'll get the audience, but they lose their integrity, and they lose in the end their ability to actually say what they believe, which fundamentally for me is that's the line I'm not willing to cross.
I just saw this comment.
Yeah. So it was the actual issue that YouTube tells me it was actually the title that they took issue with, and I kind of went, I could change it, but no, I'm not I'm not going to start molding myself. I blurred most of the footage that I blurred the key footage of victims that was there. Yeah, and it's funny because, so for example, someone that I know who runs a Facebook page in the UK got pinged for showing the face of the shooter. You know, and it's like, well, that's all over news sites here in Australia. So it's a dance. You never quite know exactly how the censors are going to behave. But then you have to make that choice. Do you mold yourself to try and fit inside the box, the little playpen that they want you to fit in? Or do you stay true to what you actually believe is the truth and what you want to say? So that's the balancing act in moments like this.
Can I play you the video I made today?
Sure.
And I was coming from a point of, you know, I keep saying we need to have difficult conversations because unfortunately, the moderates are the ones whose voices get drowned out because they focus on the NSN. And like we've talked about them before, it's a handful of people. You know, you've got a handful of characters, Joel Davis, Thomas Sewell, and whoever else. And the media makes it out like there's hundreds of thousands of them. There's like 50. There's not that many, right? But
yeah, well, they claim to have 3,500 signed up to their political party now.
Look, they might.
We'll see.
And to be honest, like, again, just for the record, I don't condone it, but I understand if they do. Because what I'm about to say is that those of us who are quite moderate, you know, people who disagree with me will always say, oh, she's a crazy right winger. I'm actually very centrist. I'm a libertarian. There are some things I'm a bit more conservative on, but I'm also somewhat left in some ways. Like, I like that we have Medicare, right?
Yeah.
But my moderate voice gets drowned out because the large vocal minority on the left will call me a racist. And instead what you have is people who will march through Burke Street with a swastika that get the attention, and it drowns out the rational people in the middle. We're not hateful people. I'm not a racist person. I'm more well-traveled than most Australians. I've spent a significant amount of time in the Middle East. I went on a fucking 30-day desert trip with the Bedouins. I love the people that I met over there. I'm not anti-Muslim. I am anti-extremism. I am anti us not being able to have a conversation about objective reality. This is not about, is Islam good or bad, or right-leaning, left-leaning. This is about, look at what fucking happened with your own eyes and speak about that. I'm sick of us being beholden to these ideologies. I'm sick of like the woke lefties coming in and going, oh, well, no, can't have that conversation. You're a racist. I'm not a fucking racist. I'm just someone. Sorry.
We do need to have a conversation about what do we do about this, because people are rightly saying this is an atrocity, and it is. I mean, you know, Joe Cameron, he words escape me for the horrific actions of yesterday. You know, and he's donated to the GoFundMe for Ahmed Al-Ahmed, the guy who tackled one of the shooters. You know, people are rightly outraged and they want to know what's being done about it. This is essentially the Victorian crime problem on steroids, right? This is, you know, 10 years worth of violent crime packed into a single incident, right? But it's the same principle. People are looking at it going, yes, but what do we do about this? How are we going to fix this? How are we going to make sure this doesn't happen again? Which is a fair question. And so a lot of people are saying, well, it's the Muslim problem, right? And, you know, Baz the Dark Horse says it's in the Quran, Topher. What the hell are you saying? Well, okay, but don't fiddle kids is also in the Bible, and yet there's a bunch of Catholic priests that didn't seem to get that memo, right? So there are people that will act according to the scriptures that they profess to believe in, and there are people that won't. A Muslim who wants to practice his faith but live peaceably alongside me, I've got no problem with. I disagree with their faith. I will try and share my faith with them and you know, all the rest of it. But if they're going to participate in civil society, earn their keep, pay their own way, live in peace with their neighbors, I've got less of an issue with that person than I do with a hardline communist, you know, who might be an atheist, not believe in any God at all, but they want to try and run my life for me. I've got less of a problem with a Muslim who wants to live in peace alongside me than I do with a hardline lefty who wants to control my life. The ones who do believe that killing people is the right thing to do, in order to spread their religion or get their virgins in heaven or whatever their particular thing may be. Those are the problem people, but those are individuals. This is always, for me, always has been, always will be, about identifying and dealing with individuals, because if we paint with a broad brush, we end up painting a bunch of people that shouldn't be painted, and we make a bunch of enemies out of the people who could and should be our allies in this process.
I'm going to play this video, but then I want to contrast over. I just don't want to lose this thought, so I'm just going to bookmark it. When we have a look at the predominantly Muslim countries, and what I mean by predominantly Muslim, over 50% of the population identify as Muslim. Of them, there's 49, give or take. There's lots of small countries that pop up in Africa over the time. Most of those countries were Christian. Now, you could say they were Christian because they were colonized. Prior to that, they were probably tribal. They probably had a whole host of different tribal beliefs, indigenous beliefs. But a lot of these new Muslim nations were taken over either by the Ottomans or by brute force. And if we're going to have a conversation about what's happening in the greater sense of the Western world, you know, whether it's the UK, here, France, we also need to include the slaughter of Christians in Nigeria right now at the hand of Muslims.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. And the thing that I get frustrated with is, oh, what about the children that died in Gaza? What fucking monster do you think I am? I don't want anyone to die. Why is it because I call out the death here in Bondi, I somehow justify the deaths in Gaza? And this is the thing. I have spent a lot of time in Jordan. I've spent a lot of time in Egypt. I've spent time in Syria. I've met these people. Most of them are beautiful, hospitable people. They are not their governments. And I believe, and I do honestly believe this, there would be wonderful people in Gaza. Unfortunately, many of them, after years and years of conflict, have been radicalized. I don't think they were born evil. I don't think they're inherently evil. I think they're a victim of their circumstances. Because also, if you don't submit to Islam, like in Iran or now Afghanistan, you will be slaughtered. They slaughter their own people. The only way out of Islam is slaughter. It's in the Quran. So we need to have this conversation, but I want to play this video because I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but let me pull it up because this is what I put out today. And I didn't want to do the same thing that everyone's talking about, right? But this is my opinion. So let me just play it. Precipice, and it's about time we have the difficult conversation. We are teetering on the edge of a cliff. Yesterday's terrorist massacre at Bondi Beach, where 15 innocent lives were brutally taken, isn't just another tragedy. It is the inevitable explosion of hate we have allowed to build for years. We are at the precipice. Surrender our nation to division, extremism, and decline, or fight back with pride, truth, and unity. This country, our country, is worth fighting for, but only if we finally start having these difficult conversations. We've seen the warning signs for years and too often looked away or worse, excused them. Unchecked hate has festered on all sides. Public figures have called for political assassinations, celebrated the death of their political opponents, and actively participated in the doxing of Jewish Australians, burning our flag and calling for the death to Australia. And there were no consequences to it. On the streets, we've tolerated gatherings at the Sydney Opera House just days after the October 7 massacre, where many chanted in ways that celebrated the atrocities. We've seen marches across the Sydney Harbour Bridge waving flags of terrorist groups like Hamas and the Taliban, whilst holding posters glorifying Iran's terrorist regime, and there were no consequences to it. And in our parliament, divisive MPs stoke endless division, prioritising radical ideology over national unity. They weaponised our greatest strength, our empathy, our fair go, and turned it against us. Our natural Australian compassion has been twisted into a weapon to silence anyone who dares to show pride in our country, our history, and our way of life. And there is no consequences to it. This doesn't happen overnight. Extremism grows in darkness, fueled by censorship, complacency, and failed leadership. We have eroded civil liberties, stifled debate, and let divisive ideologies override truth. We saw it in COVID that reasonable questions were punished, and again, no consequences to it. Our leaders have prioritised censoring one side of this debate, and through the E-Safety Commission, they've demanded global takedown of content. They've deplatformed voices for political dissent, whilst pushing a social media ban on under 16s that's driving kids into darker, unregulated corners of the internet. The more they censor, deplatform, and shut down open debate, the more they push frustrated people to the fringes where unchecked extremism takes root. Extremism thrives when open conversation dies, and just like black mold, it grows in the shadows. By failing to challenge hate wherever wherever it hides, we've let it poison our society. Australians, the responsibility is ours. We've too often picked political correctness over truth, and now we must demand better from our politicians, the media, and mostly ourselves. Australia is worth fighting for. So do not let extremist or weaponized guilt steal it from us. This is our country, forged by courage, mateship, and a fair go. We must stand tall with unashamed pride and reclaim our voices. It is time to speak boldly and fight with unbreakable love for this nation we inherited from the Anzacs, the pioneers, and the dreamers who forged the greatest country on earth. Sorry.
Yeah, you make some great points in there, and I do want to talk about fighting for this country, because out of this we need to come to a positive and action that we can actually take going forward, and we need to talk about what are Australian values. What is it that we would be fighting for, rather than fighting against? But this is going to be my last time touching on this topic. I haven't scrolled through all the remaining super chats, so Baz, if there's more from you, I haven't seen them yet, but Baz makes this point. So he says 40 shot and Muslims are not the problem. What? All right, well, let me share this with you. 51 dead. Who do you want to make the group? Who's the group responsible for the mosque shooting in New Zealand? 51 worshippers dead. Anyone? Any? You'd want to just sort of say, pick his color of skin, pick his religion, say that he was an atheist or this or that, and just go, right, we're going to lump the whole group in. You see how that doesn't work? The same is actually true with Muslims. And I get it, because they're all this identifiable group, they all look the same to you, but they're not. Within Islam, there are a wide range of different sects, some of them much more fundamentalist than others. And honestly, a lot of them hate each other. And within the Muslim world, there are an enormous number of people that reject the use of violence to spread Islam, regardless of what the Quran says. Just like there are Catholics that show up to church only on Easter and Christmas, regardless of what the Bible says. So no, it's just not that simple. It just doesn't work that way. I'm sorry, Baz. It just doesn't. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm done on that topic.
I'm going to say one more thing about this. Like I said, I've literally spent time in the Middle East. I haven't been to Iran, and I haven't been to I have actually been to the border of Iraq, or Kurdistan. But in all of my dealings with people, they were beautiful and hospitable. I don't hate these people at all. And I honestly do believe, were they not under very strict Islamic law, they probably wouldn't be practicing Muslims.
Yeah.
This is important, because many of those countries, Egypt among them, were taken over by the Islamic faith.
Yeah.
Adapt or die, basically. And
it was the crusade.
Crusade. The Christians did it too. I'm not defending Christians. And just so it's abundantly clear, I don't belong to any faith. I grew up in the Catholic Church. I know the Bible. I don't practice it. I have my own feelings about the Catholic Church. Watch one of the podcasts, you'll know how I feel about it. But the reason I bring this up is that we have to look at what's going on in Iran for a minute, and look at how many Iranians, particularly the women, are trying so hard to escape a hellish regime. These are people who lived under true oppression. They're forced to wear the hijab. If they speak up, if they dissent, they are slaughtered.
Yeah.
We've got Afghani women who just want to live. They can't leave the house. They can't speak. They can't even get an education. My heart bleeds for those women. I can't do anything about it. I wish I could. And when you talk about migration, I would let those people come in, because of the horrors they suffer under the Taliban. But that being said, instead we let in the war age people. We let in the Islamic clerks
who will sit there
in Western Sydney and talk about how jihad is part of Islam.
Yeah.
And all of the Muslims who listen to this, please scream it from the rooftops that you denounce these people, that you hate them like we hate them. These are people who are calling for the global intifada to kill the infidels.
Intifada,
Intifada, sorry. And then let's look at the Sydney Harbour Bridge protests, and then, of course, the protest at the Opera House. Two of Australia's biggest landmarks were overrun with people who are espousing hateful ideology, not the useful idiots, not the people who were truly there because they're bleeding hearts. I look at those people with genuine pity. They are caught up in it because in their heart of hearts, they think that they need to love everyone and they think that's how you do it.
And
You
they think that everyone else
idiots.
will love them back, which they
You
won't.
are useful idiots.
Yeah.
You can detest innocent civilians dying in Gaza or Ukraine or Syria or Afghanistan.
Or Bondi.
You can detest
all at the
that
same time.
all at the same time, whilst also condemning Hamas and the Taliban and Assad and ISIS. These people are evil. You don't march with them just because they're part of the same fucking religion. And in Australia, on our harbour bridge, we saw them waving flags of the Taliban, of ISIS, wearing the Hamas headbands, that keffiyeh that they innocently think is promoting innocent Gazans. It's a terrorist scarf. And you're wearing it like it's a fucking badge of honor, marching on Australian soil, condemning Australians who dare to speak up about how they feel about what is happening in our fucking country. And do you know what happened, Topher? Nothing. These people were allowed to do it. And you want to know why people get radicalized and why people hate Islam and why all of a sudden Muslims feel like there's a target on their back? Because our weak as fuck leaders do nothing. Nothing. Hatfield literally called for the assassination of a fucking sitting president of our major ally. She still has sponsorship deals. She still has her fucking platform. This is an Australian citizen calling for the assassination of Donald Trump, and our politicians do fucking nothing. And they wonder why we're angry. You want to know why hate exists in this country? Because you allow one side to perpetuate hate and call for us to all fucking die because they don't like us. And you don't let us speak up. And you wonder why we get angry. Our leaders have blood on their hand. These all have to do with the exact same fucking thing. If you want to call out hate on the right, you call out hate on the left. They're all extremists. They are all hateful fucking people. And if you want to call this a fucking democracy, allow us to fucking speak.
Could not agree more. Could not agree more. Also, you're a bit terrifying. Also, your microphone can't actually deal with the level of volume.
Sorry, I should have done that.
We did catch your meaning. Let's just say that your vibe came through, but at times the words did not.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
But this is like, I'm worked up.
Yeah,
I'm worked up because we shouldn't be here. We shouldn't be in this position. We're here because reasonable, rational, normal people aren't allowed to speak.
Yeah.
We're called racists. We're called Islamophobes. We're called bigots.
Yeah.
This is just common sense. And we are talking about objectively true things.
Yeah.
And I brought up Abby because it's important, you know, and all of you guys get all worked up when I bring her up. This is someone who is currently in a position where she makes good money. She's held up in the media as some kind of poster girl for feminism. She is like held up in the media as this like amazing icon for young women. And none of these people called out the fact that she called for the assassination of Donald Trump. The only people who called that out were those of us who are right-wing extremists, Sky News, Murdoch Papers. If the left really care about humanity and social cohesion, you condemn the hate on your side. She shouldn't have a fucking platform. Why the hell did ASIO not arrest her?
Yeah.
Why the hell did this guy have access to 6 weapons when he wasn't an Australian citizen?
Yeah.
Our government has failed us.
There's some serious questions about that. Now, can we make a change of pace? Because the government
my blood pressure is high.
The government have clearly picked their scapegoat. And Boschi is right here. You know, the Firearm Registry, New South Wales Police, AFP, ASIO responsible. Albo didn't know how to answer why the son's ISIS link and his dad's firearm license never signaled a red flag. They allowed them into Australia. See, what's happening here is they know that a rational exploration of the causes would lead back to them. So they have to find another scapegoat. They have to find something else to pin it on. You know, and ARU Isaac is right. You know, here we go, ready to spend all my money on super chats tonight in regards to gun law reform and how pissed I am that this is the scapegoat again. Literally 24 hours later, not even. It was literally about 20 hours later. Let me play you this from Anthony Albanese. He's already, no investigation needed. He's already figured out what the problem is, and don't worry, he's got a plan. He's going to fix it for us.
Take whatever action is necessary. And this afternoon at 4 o'clock, I will put on the agenda of the National Cabinet. Tougher gun laws, quite clearly, the Howard government's gun laws have made an enormous difference in Australia and are a proud moment of reform, quite rightly, achieved across the Parliament with bipartisan support. If we need to toughen these up, if there's anything we can do, I'm certainly up for it, and I hope to get National Cabinet on board for that this afternoon as well.
I'm up for it. I'm definitely up for it. I mean, no need
Well,
for
I don't know
investigations.
about you. The machete ban worked. So why wouldn't toughening up our gun laws?
Listen, I'm glad he's doing this National Cabinet thing, this body that you won't find anywhere in the Constitution that operates extra outside of our Constitution, where all the heads of states and the federal government get together. Because, you know, he can just talk to Jacinta Allen and say, hey, listen, could you just hold off on chopping up those machete bins? Can we just not recycle those just yet? Hold on to them. Ring your friendly local paint company, and let's see if we can get these things rebranded as gun disposal bins. I mean, it's worked so well.
Can I say something? Because I just feel like this is important. Because prior to this podcast and prior to getting really heavily involved in these conversations, I've got to tell you, I didn't really think about our gun laws. I didn't.
Yeah.
You know, and you guys can yell at me for that. Prior to this, I actually was like, no, I'm glad we don't have guns. Watching what's happening, I've realized how important it is to have the ability to defend yourself. And I guess, you know, you can call that my radicalization because of the home invasion. But like, just take a step back from Bondi for a second and guns. Just looking at how cavalier the Victorian government is around Victorians defending themselves, you know, you'll see Jacinta Allen. I mean, we've talked about this on the podcast, but just to drive the point home, she will get up and say the machete bins are working, whilst in the same breath then saying that an Indigenous boy was murdered with a kitchen knife. She will say that the machete bins are working and that the best course of action for a Victorian when faced with a threat of someone holding machete in your home is to just call the cops.
Yeah.
Is that before or after they've dismembered my arm, Jacinta? Is that before or after I've been stabbed in the face 11 times? Is that before or after they've, you know, raped my partner? And you know, I have to watch, like, I'm talking about cases, guys. I'm not talking about me specifically that happened in Cairns. But like, you know, this cavalier attitude from our politicians about the actual victims, Victorians, or the victims of crime. We are so incapacitated. There is nothing we can do to defend ourselves, and hence why I had the petition around castle law. Even if we do, we don't know what our fate is afterwards. I want to bring up the conversation about the man who disarmed the active shooter, national hero. I think everyone fucking agrees. I don't care if he was Muslim or Christian, by the way. Like, can we stop always reducing it to someone's beliefs? He is a man who had the fucking guts to stand up.
Yeah, he's a legend.
And, you know, you made the comment in your video about why didn't he shoot him in the face? And I agree with what you said in that video. And this is my part. This is my belief. He didn't know what I would. I'm projecting. Obviously, I don't know what he thinks, but I would say he hesitated because who wants to be someone that murdered someone? Who wants to be someone that shoots someone and takes their life? That's a really fucking difficult thing to make peace with. And we can all fire off in the comments and saying, I would have done it. I would have done it. Taking someone's life should be a barrier, a bridge that few of us ever consider crossing. I understand those of you who are military trained and all that sort of stuff. That's different. But he is a man that runs a fruit shop and he's holding a high-powered rifle in the face of someone who's literally just murdered people. Can you imagine having to make that decision? Do I take this man's life right now? And then what? He gets accused of being a shooter too? Like, there's so many different parts to this conversation. I don't think any of us can expect how we would react in a situation until you're faced with it. I don't want to be responsible for taking someone's fucking life.
Yeah. Look, I can understand that. Can I say there is a big gender difference in this? Can I say that without getting my head bitten off? I know you won't bite my head off, but in the comments,
I might.
There is a really big gender difference in this. One of the things, it's unconfirmed at this point, so I haven't included it in any of my videos, but there is a video circulating from someone who appears to have been an eyewitness who makes the statement that there were 4 New South Wales police officers pretty much at the scene. And they withdrew and they held back rather than moving in. And my understanding is that 3 of those officers were women. And there is a big difference. Testosterone is an amazing thing. When it's channeled in the right ways, it's a superpower. When it's channeled in the wrong ways, it makes you the Antichrist. Women and men respond differently. We all saw when President Trump got shot. And the Secret Service, all these guys come jumping up around him, standing tall. And there's that one female Secret Service agent, and she's standing next to him with her head down, like this, like, please try and shoot him in the legs. I'll stop the bullet if you shoot him in the legs, right? And his upper body was exposed in that direction. I'm not gonna call anyone a coward. I've never been shot at. I don't know how I would respond, but I believe there is a clear difference. Testosterone makes a very clear difference in these moments.
I would agree.
And I faced with someone, would I have done what Ahmed Al-Ahmed did in that moment? I don't know. None of us actually know. I hope I would, but none of us actually know until we have that moment. And we know that he was the only one out of everyone there. He was the only one. So it's a very rare thing for someone to have that kind of courage. But I do believe if faced with that choice of to pull the trigger or not, let that man walk away and keep killing other people, or pull the trigger and let the chips fall where they may. I'll pull the trigger. I'll pull the trigger because the last thing I want to live with on my conscience is the knowledge that he then went and killed somebody else, and I could have stopped him and I chose not to, out of self-preservation or out of some internal fear. I have a greater fear, and that fear is of letting people down, of not fulfilling my duty as a man to protect other people. And if that requires me to kill somebody, then I believe that's what I would do.
I agree with Amanda
like
here.
I said, and just before anyone gets at me in the comments, I'm not saying that I would have charged the gunman. I don't know. But if I found myself in the position where I had the gun in my hands, I think I can say with confidence I would squeeze that trigger.
Amanda's comment here, women aren't fit for these positions. I agree. And, you've heard me argue this before. Women in the fourth wave feminism believe that women can be just everything that a man can be. And I would argue, no, we can't. Biologically, we can't. Like, if I had that gun in my hand, I would like to think I would be brave enough to pull the trigger. But I don't know. I've never been in that position, and I hope to never be in that position.
Same.
And it's all really easy for us to wax lyrical about how we'd behave. But, let's have a look at what happens to people during natural disasters and things like that. When you're faced with actual confrontation and death. If you're trained for it, if you're a police officer and you're a military person, you've had exposure to it. But when it comes to these cops and stuff like that, I'm not defending the women, because I do believe that there are many jobs that women have no business being in, not because they aren't good people and they don't deserve equality, just because realistically you're not cut out for it. those women were just patrolling. They weren't there
Yeah.
for an active shooter. There's no way they would have been, they would have had any training. They may have read something in a book or spent half an hour on it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
you know, I get what everyone's saying, and I'm not trying to defend people. I'm just like, it's really easy for everyone to get all brave in the comments. Oh, I would have done this. I would have done that. You know,
So
it's easy to make that call when you're not in the position.
okay, but by them not stepping forward, they've broken the social contract. The
Which
deal is in Australia, this is not how it should be, but this is how it is in Australia. You give up your ability to defend yourself, and we will take some of the taxes that we expropriate from you and use that to pay for other people that will protect you. That's the deal.
Yeah.
And when the people who are wearing body armor and carrying guns take a step backwards, leaving the people that have no guns and no body armor to fend for themselves, I'm sorry, that is unacceptable.
Agree with you.
That's not about male or female. That's not, but you can't say, oh, we were only patrolling. You've got body armor and fucking guns. Why do you think you have those things? It's so that you step forward when everyone else is running in the other direction. That's literally your job. And if you can't do that, then you are psychologically unfit to be a police officer. Hand in your badge.
I agree with you in principle, and I agree with you on paper. The issue is we have a totally demoralized police force, and we have people in there who should never have been in there. We have, in the last few years, we have downgraded the requirements, we have rolled back the fitness test, and we have rolled back the psychological test. So on principle, I would agree with you. But these people in these positions, they're not there because they went through some rigorous training and they were the right people for the job. They've been put in that role because it was like, that sounds like a cool idea. I'll be a cop. These aren't people who had the calling to be an active police officer. And people saying DEI, I would like to think that somehow they did get their way through police academy. I'm not going to say DEI, but I will say that the rigorous training and the, you know, this what's the word I'm looking for? This pact you make to go serve and protect like we see in the movies. I don't think half of the Victorian or the New South Wales police officers have ever made that, oh yeah, I'm here to preserve and protect, and my job is to defend Australian people. I don't think they think like that.
See, on the DEI front, though, I actually think that is a valid point. I would make the argument that having different physical entry exams for men versus women is a form of DEI. That is a form of lowering the bar in order to have diversity and inclusivity, etc. So I would say that the people saying DEI are not necessarily wrong. Scooter Nutmeg, they mean people like Carly and me. When the Premier and the Prime Minister blame those that seek to divide society, they're talking about people that are trying to have the rational conversation. People probably more Carly. They're probably talking about you more than me, Carly.
Well, I did say to G, if I get too worked up tonight, I'll probably get a knock on the door and I'll get arrested. You know, I do get angry, and I get angry only when I feel like nothing else has cut through, nothing else has worked. Sure. And, you know, when we're talking about the DEI stuff in the police force, I agree with you. I don't think women should be Navy SEAL officers. I don't think women should be in combat positions, not because they're not capable. I just think it's biologically not a good decision. You know, and not only that, I think very few people are made for those positions. It takes a level of
very few men.
Stoicism bordering on sociopathic tendencies to be able to compartmentalize that you're about to take someone's life. I'm not condemning them. I'm not saying they're evil people. I'm saying that to be part of SEAL Team 6, right? And to be part of I was going to say the SS, not the SS, the Secret Service.
SAS.
The SAS, that's the one. Wrong.
Slight difference there. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you know what I mean? I would expect that if you qualify for a Navy SEAL or SAS, you are the best of the best. I'm thinking Top Gun Maverick. I'm thinking you are unequivocally the right person for the job. I'm not thinking, oh, you know, I hope they're good. And this all, like, if you want to have this conversation, this all stems from demonizing masculinity. We've basically castrated men the last 20 years. Every time a man exhibits masculine behaviors, the woke and the current politics of the day will condemn men for doing it.
Yeah, and then we get a situation like that shooting, and you know, people say, oh well, where were all the men? Well, we saw one of them step up, and you know, to defend a lot of the people that ran the other way, you have to be in a particularly advantageous position for it not to be suicide, for you to run towards an armed person when you're unarmed. Let's remember the civilians didn't have the benefit of the guns and the body armor that police wear. And to be fair, the body armor that police are typically wearing when they're just patrolling would be pretty useless against most rifles. So in their defense, the body armor isn't really the issue, but they were armed. They had guns. For someone who is unarmed to try and tackle and take out someone who is armed, and by the way, both of these guys were pretty proficient.
The shooters,
certainly the boy. The son was very, very proficient. He was using a straight pull rifle, and you can bet your bottom dollar they're coming for all the straight pulls. So everyone that bought Adlers, etc. Sorry guys, bad luck. But he was very, very proficient and had obviously done a lot of shooting. So the reason why Ahmed was able to do what he did was because he was positioned out of sight behind a car that was in the blind spot of the shooter. The shooter's shooting this way and he's over there, and he was able to get the jump on him and literally get all the way up to him without him seeing him coming. You can't charge the bridge, the bridge that the other guy was on where he had visibility. That's suicide. So in the defense of a lot of the people that ran away, to do other than run away would just be suicide on their part. It would just be madness. But even so, it does take a particular, most men would run away. Even in Ahmed's position, they wouldn't run towards the shooter. They'd be, oh, he's not looking my way, I'm going to get out of here. And I don't blame them. Again, I haven't been tested. I've never been in that situation. I hope never to be in that situation. I might prove to be one of the ones that ran away. I hope not. I wasn't one of the ones that ran away during other events in my life, but I've never been through anything like that. That's not comparable. So I don't know. Ahmed ran towards the trouble and deserves the respect and admiration that should come with that. But like you said, even amongst men, that's a relatively rare characteristic. And we know that because he was the only one. He was out of thousands of people. He was the only one that ran in the direction that he ran in. And we need to celebrate that. We need to celebrate that. And yet people that are willing to do that, it's a little bit like the chapter in my book, In Defense of Assholes. The people who are willing to go first and cop all the slings and arrows on any given issue, they're going to come with baggage because their personality is inclined towards, going first on other things and maybe being wrong. Well, in the same way, the person that's more likely to run towards an active shooter and has that testosterone and that psyche, chances are, and I know nothing about Ahmed, I'm not saying anything about him specifically, but statistically, you would think that person's probably more likely to have been in trouble for various reasons, to have some of the negative traits that come with high levels of testosterone, high levels of sort of masculine behavior. You can't get one without the other a lot of the time. There might be some rare individuals, maybe Ahmed is one of them, but oftentimes you're going to get, it's a basket of goods, and you're going to get the basket, the positive aspects of high testosterone along with the negative aspects of it. And we need to be more amenable to that in our society if we want to have more of the kinds of men like Ahmed.
I just read somewhere in the comments and I missed it, but it was basically talking about, do you blame a lot of cops from not wanting to step up anymore, and same with the military? And I just wanted to touch on that, because people are sort of saying like they're abandoning their positions because of the government of our day and being demonized. And, we saw basically the Salem witch trials of our serving veterans, our previous serving veterans, and they went after them for hate crimes. And now we have return servicemen who are actively being investigated by, AFD or whoever, AFP, about war crimes that they committed overseas when in deployment. And you can kind of see it's a bit thankless. And it's the same in the US, Marines come back, or veterans come back, and they're just completely abandoned by their government. And they carry with them the baggage of being on the front lines of war. I think that when I hear people saying that police are abandoning positions, do I blame them? No, I don't. I think this is all part of we're all collectively exhausted. There's a general sense of exacerbation because, we say this all the time, how much worse does it have to get before we see things change? And I would argue significantly worse. What I will say to that is, once someone has taken that oath, or once someone's done that training, they don't lose it. Just because they're not actively serving doesn't mean these people aren't capable of stepping up. And I would like to think that many of those police officers who have stepped down, whether it's in COVID or since, should the call come, I think many of them for the right reasons would come back. You know, I'm not putting words in their mouth, but I think with Australians right now, no one knows where to channel their fury, because every time you do speak up, you know, I'm sure someone will clip this podcast and that reel's probably already going viral somewhere. You know, oh, look at this hateful person. And, you know, you get to a point where you're like, you've called me everything. Like your words
you
mean
don't care
nothing
anymore.
now. I need action. I need to see physical action. I don't know what happens from here, because all I'm seeing right now is a whole lot of conversation. And, you know, it's more government crackdown, you know, taking away more gun rights. And then what? Then we're all just sitting ducks.
Yeah, disarming victims for the protection of attackers is never a good plan. Just going through, we're a little bit behind on the super chats. We've got a huge audience today and very, very active. We've had over 2,000 comments already. So Patrick Van Royst is saying, what were the Crusades about? Then it was about retaking Christian countries that had been invaded by Muslims. Yeah, on the Christian side, that is exactly what it was about. On the Muslim side, it was about conquering in the name of Islam. And yes, that's absolutely correct. That is what it was about. Someone earlier made a comment about 50,000 terror attacks in the name of Islam. Yep, all true. Also true, not every Muslim wants to kill you. And when we fail to, you know, so Baz is being prolific tonight. So thank you for your support, Baz. But the Quran tells him to strike our necks. Yes. You know, like I said, the Bible says don't commit adultery. There's a lot of people call themselves Christians that don't seem to have read that bit. You know, Constantinople was named Constantinople after Constantine, after he conquered it. And he's a very interesting historical figure who causes a lot of the problems in modern day Christianity, because he wanted to make his empire, which was basically the whole known world at the time, known from their perspective. He wanted to make it Christian. And so, yeah, he declared Christianity to be the official religion. But unfortunately, not everyone's going to go along with that. So in order to not create a massive problem, you have to redefine what Christianity means. So everyone's a Christian in name. But what he did was he rescheduled a bunch of the Christian festivals to match up with various pagan festivals or other religious festivals. So people criticize Christianity today. They're like, oh, Christmas isn't the time of year when Jesus would have been born. Yes, we know. Where the Bible tells us that the shepherds were out in their fields with their sheep. That means it must have been sometime during their warmer months. And we celebrate Christmas during the middle of their winter. We know that's the wrong time, and Constantine's the guy that changed it. He's also the reason why we have rabbits associated with Easter. It's got nothing to do with Christianity. He picked those dates. He basically shoehorned Easter in on top of an existing pagan festival. I don't have a problem with that per se. There are people who are like, oh, the rabbits are demonic. You can't have trees at Christmas and, you know, blah, blah, blah. I think a lot of people go way too far with that. But yeah, we know Christianity, thanks to Constantine, Christianity was diluted. It was watered down. It was basically shoehorned into a whole range of different religions that were present within his kingdom at the time, in order for him to declare Christianity to be the official religion of the kingdom without starting an instant civil war. So again, you can hark back to these times. You can hark back to the Crusades. You can hark back to Constantine. It's never as simple as you think. Right. These were human beings as well, and they were dealing with real world situations as well. You know, I don't
I'm
I
sorry,
remember that.
To keep the rabbits out. Sorry, that was funny.
Out. That's was it a Telstra ad, a Big Pond ad, or something like that? That was so funny. You know, so at no point in history is the romanticized version of our history true. It was never true. There is no romanticized version of history that was as clear-cut and as pure and as simple as a superficial reading of history would have you believe. Not even Constantine, not the Crusades, none of it.
I think the issue with history is that, firstly, who was the scribe that committed it to paper? You know, I mean, prior to the printing press, you know, a lot of these stories get handed down. A lot of it is memory and recollection as opposed to objective truth. I'm not saying that none of these things happened. I'm just like, let's just take it with a grain of salt. But also when it comes to history, and I think I opened with this, or I said this to you before we started the recording, is that we're very selective about the history we like to use. Like, for example, when it comes to Indigenous affairs in this country, we go back to 300 years ago and we punish all white-skinned people over the crimes of our ancestors from 9-10 generations ago. It's like, okay, all right, like, if that's the game you want to play, well, let's go look at Genghis Khan. Like, was it 1/4 of the entire population of this planet is a relative of his because he was prolific with his invasions and raping and pillaging? You know,
Yeah.
like I don't see the Mongols being held to account. And, you know, in Mongolia, there's massive statues for his name's Genghis, actually. I should stop saying Genghis. It's Genghis Khan.
Yeah, Genghis, yeah.
You know, they still have their statues for him.
Statues,
and it contrasts over to Eastern Europe and some of the old Soviet countries. You travel around, if anyone went and watched Bald and Bankrupt, you'll see that there are still Soviet mosaics, there's still Lenin statues, there's still Marx statues, there's still Stalin statues. Like, these people are aware of their history. They don't just condemn the parts that are ugly. In every civilization's history, there are ugly parts of it. And by denying those parts, like I'm descendant from Vikings. I know what my ancestors did, and it wasn't good. You know, but no one's sitting there going, oh, let's go after the Vikings, you know, or maybe they are, but not that I'm aware of, you know. But why is it the colonization? Sure, okay, they did some shit. They did some really terrible shit. But what civilization hasn't at some point?
Yeah.
You know, like I'm just sick of these yardsticks. Like, oh, you know, if you look at what Israel's doing to Gaza right now, okay, cool. Let's look at what Iran is doing to Yemen. Let's look at what the Congolese are doing to, do you know what I mean? Like it's always like well, someone else is doing it worse.
But at what point does that just become the whataboutism that we were talking about before? Like,
well,
you know,
my point is that, like, I think what most people don't like facing is that violence is inherent to us as humans. You can denounce it all you like, but it is consistent across every civilization that's ever lived, from as far back as the Egyptians, the Romans.
Yeah.
This,
before.
I think it was like what, since the post World War II till up until like the 90s, that was the most peaceful humanity had ever been, right? And there was still wars. There was still conflict. You had Vietnam, you had Korea, you had Desert Storm and Iraq. You still had, you know, the Cold War as well. So even knowing those
wars on the continent as well, I mean, you know, so much. But you're correct. I believe someone can maybe Google this in the comments. I believe there was one day where there were no declared wars in the world. I believe that it wound down to the point that there was a single day where whatever the remaining conflicts were had been ended. And I think it lasted for a day before someone invaded someone. And literally one day in, as best as we can tell, human history, where there hasn't been a war going on.
Yeah. And so my point with bringing that up is, if we're going to denounce parts of our history that we find really ugly and continually point to that as like, that's the part that we need to constantly make up for. And, you know, whether it's on the left, they point to Gaza and they point to colonization in Australia. They're their two main ones. And apparently those two are linked. That's what they espouse anyway.
Somehow,
And then on the right, we talk about the Ottoman Empire and we talk about radical Islam, right? Or unfortunately, whether or not we like to agree with this or not, the reality is there is very rarely a time when humanity is at peace. There is always conflict. There is always war. And so trying to connect all these dots and saying, well, if you've spoken up about this, but you haven't spoken about that, then, you know, I think all of these conversations are incredibly reductive. I don't think they're getting us anywhere where we need to go. I think the best we can do is day by day face what we're looking at. And right now, like, you know, in the last 48 hours, there was a terrorist attack in Bondi. That's where our attention should be right now. Firstly, it's fresh. It just happened. Secondly, it's on our soil. We have the jurisdiction to take action. That's where our conversation should be. And guess what? We take that one down and then we battle the next one.
Yeah. Starting with the things that you do have some agency over, and we have agency over laws and policies, etc., in this country. So the question here from Lord Andrew Bruce of the McKinney, could this have been prevented if we were armed? Prevented, no. Shortened enormously, yes. And there is considerable data on that, but I'll come back to that in a second. I want to talk about the prevention side of things first. One of the fantasies that the gun grabbers sell is this idea that if you take the guns out of society, the violence will stop. And there's a lot of people in Victoria missing hands or with scars on their body from machetes that would like to have a word with, you know, just when exactly does the violence stop? How few guns do we have to have before people stop, you know, killing each other with machetes? Just help me out with that one. And if you get rid of machetes, they'll use rocks. It's a fact, even in the US, where they have obviously, famously liberal gun laws, more people are murdered with bare hands and fists than are killed with rifles, specifically. When they quote the gun statistics in the US, they're lumping them all together, handguns as well as rifles, and suicides are in there as well, by the way. And when you actually start to segment down the statistics, you are much more likely to be punched to death, even in America, than you are to be murdered with a rifle in America. So unfortunately, violence is with us. Carly just covered that. Violence is with us. And for as long as violent implements are available, someone will put them to an improper use. And that includes guns. And so could this have been prevented if we were armed? It could be argued that if the attackers knew that they were going to very quickly get shot by somebody and the attack wasn't going to work, then they might not have started the attack. So there is an argument to say maybe you could prevent it by having a sufficiently armed society. But the truth is, even in America, most of their mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. So obviously the attacker is seeking out a place where he believes he won't get quickly shot. But they do still happen elsewhere. They do still happen in areas where people are known to be armed. I'm mindful of there was an attack that ISIS claimed on a Draw Muhammad event in Texas. I'm scratching the back of my memory here. It's some years ago. And the guy two people shot at an unarmed guard, hit him in the leg, and then a couple of armed guards, I think, just immediately just lit them up and killed them. The only people killed in the attack were the Islamic attackers, right? And so an armed society is not a guarantee that there won't be violence, that attacks won't happen. It is a fighting chance for the victims to level the playing field and to hold their own, and its consequences for the attackers. It raises the stakes for them considerably. The chances of someone carrying out two violent attacks is much lower if the victims can shoot back. So, prevented, no. Minimized, yes.
I'll also just bring this back to something that, gets swept under the rug because of things like this. Like, bring it back to the crime crisis that we have in this country right now. We don't even have pepper spray. If we were able to, 5 years ago when this started happening with the Apex youth gang, fight back and, break some legs and, teach them some lessons, we wouldn't be where we're at today.
100%.
Reciprocal violence is a really good deterrent for prolific crime, escalation. Not to bring up my mate Nayab, guys, grab a drink, grab a shot.
Hey.
But you have a look at El Salvador, and I love this man. I am pro Nayab Bukele, and I'm this close to going and just denouncing my Australian citizenship and becoming El Salvadorian. I joke. I will always be Aussie. But the thing that Nayab did, right, and people, when all the human rights campaigners come down on him, like Amnesty International and all the lefties are like, oh, he's putting them all in concentration camps. He would never have had to build CCOT and do what he did if all of the politicians prior to him had done something.
Yeah,
and the problem is when you allow it to get so bad and so violent that the MS-13 and what's the other gang? I forget. The Venezuelan one.
Al Agua. That's Tren de Agua. Tren de Agua. Yeah.
When you allow them to proliferate the way they did, where young children in poverty had no choice but to join those gangs.
Yeah.
And yes, I understand those young boys who are recruited by the gangs, they were somewhat innocent up until the point where they got, radicalized in this gang. I understand that. But the truth is, there has to be a point where you take that action. And if you continue to ignore it, it becomes the homicide capital of the world. And then you have someone like Nayab who comes in and does what he does to clean it up. You can't condemn that man for what he did. It got so bad, and so same in Australia. And I got so worked up before because there have been countless times where our government could do something. I keep bringing it back to that Abby scenario because nothing makes me madder. This is a woman who frequently, and she's not the only one, by the way. There's a whole host of them.
No.
I pick on her specifically because she is so prolifically talked about in the media, right?
Sure.
And the problem with someone like Abby is that the entertainment industry is pushing her and her boyfriend on us without our consent, right? But, for Abby to use her platform, firstly, like she did in COVID, to militarize her audience, to go after people that she thought had the wrong beliefs around, the vaccine and COVID and the lockdowns. And now they're allowing her to still make money, having her platform, whilst literally calling for the assassination of Donald Trump. The fact that our government and our leadership, remember, Albo was on her podcast. Our government are so weak that they can't turn around and go, you crossed a line, you're going to be fined and deplatformed. Because this is the thing. They're doing it to the NSN. And I agree that the NSN are pretty fucked, right? Like, so I'm not saying anyone should be deplatformed, but if you're going to do it to one, you got to do it to the other. Otherwise, they will end up with 300.
Consistent.
Yeah, we're going to have 3,500 people signing up for the NSN. And if anything, this last event will only make them bigger. I'm not saying I want it. I'm saying it's cause and effect.
No. Well, and what will make them bigger is not the attack itself. It's the political reaction to the attack, because so many people are going to go, this is fucked. They're not fixing the problem. They're not serious. All right, we've got to blast through a few super chats where sorry, no, you go.
Oh, no, bring that up, and then I've got something from Annika Wells that I want to share.
All right, well, we're a long way behind, so we've got a few to get through.
Okay.
I think Carl's did answer this. If you were the hero who disarmed the father in this, would you shoot him? Carl's reckons maybe not.
No, I would like to think I would. I don't know.
Yeah,
I would like to. I would want to be all brave and say yes, I would, but who knows?
Yeah. Daniel Bruni says, good evening, Carls and Topher. I must say the videos you made today, you both have hit the nail on the head. Thank you, Daniel. Much appreciated.
Thank you,
Daniel. This harks back to the Muslim conversation earlier. Just denies 50,000 terror attacks were carried out by Muslims since 9/11. Your citation was bollocks. Well, I think there's 51 dead people and a bunch of grieving families. It would suggest that maybe the citation wasn't bollocks. It might be an outlier, but it certainly wasn't bollocks. And Joe says, okay, Carls, I understand what you say, nature versus nurture. I would disagree. Some people are born evil. I'm an atheist, the best person in the world. My wife is a Christian. We can't, did we marry the same person? We can't both be married to the best person in the world. That's
I will say on that, yeah, there are some evil, but I think what's that? Is it Hanlon's razor? Never attribute to malice that which can be justified by incompetence or stupidity.
That which can be equally explained by incompetence. Yeah.
I think a lot of people do evil actions aren't necessarily evil. And I'm skeptical of that. Are there genuinely evil people? Yeah, I would argue a true psychopath is evil. I would argue someone like Jeffrey Dahmer is evil. But I do think, like in the case of these two people that did the Bondi thing, they're radicalized 100%. Were they born evil? Yeah. I don't know enough about them.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is an interesting one. Ayo Isaac says, New South Wales licenses can be lost by association, even colleagues, family, or Facebook friends. The father was licensed for 15 years. The son investigated 6 years ago. Bureaucracy failed, not the law. I need to look more into the licensing side of things, because there's some stuff that I've read that just doesn't make sense. Maybe there is, maybe some of what I've read isn't accurate. I need to dive into that, because there's some, it seems odd.
I just saw really briefly that the father, so the son was born here. But the father has been on a multitude of different visas. So every time he's left the country and come back, he's been put on a different visa. So he came here originally on a tourist visa. And then, because he came here, I think in either 1998 or 1988. I read it very briefly, sorry. And he's moved around a little bit. So no, he's not a citizen. And I don't think, from what I have read, he's even a permanent resident. From what I've read,
so how do you get a gun license?
Well,
how do you get a gun license?
And how does your son end up on the ASIO watch list and then the father still has guns? Like, and this is the thing, like, we can be angry at these people for doing what they did. Absolutely. But our anger collectively as Australians need to be directed at ASIO and Anthony Albanese. Because as you said, this is a massive, gargantuan failure at a bureaucracy level. And like you said, this opening this podcast, if you're on the ASIO watch list and then you then go to carry out a terrorist attack and people die, someone's head needs to roll for that. Someone at ASIO needs to be held accountable to that. And I would ask, I'm going to say the thing you shouldn't say. Is there a chance this is a bit like the UK, where you have knowledge of something going on, but you don't address it because you don't want to be seen as racially profiling or, jumping through, making stereotypes? Like, I don't know. I'm just asking a question.
Yeah. Look, it's certainly, if we don't start seeing accountability for some of these failures, the frustration is going to rise. And, we've talked about this before. This is how you get a race war. This is how you get people taking it to that next level, is because they look at the people who said, hey, trust us, we've got this. This is why I'm so angry with the police officers that went the other way or didn't move in. The deal is the government says, hey, trust us, we've got this. You hold your horses, don't do anything stupid, we've got this. And if it turns out they don't got this, people get mad, and rightly so. They have every right to get really seriously mad. This would be interesting. I would kind of love to see someone push their luck and try and do a Palestine protest in the next 2 weeks.
I think they're stupid enough to do it.
I think they're dumb enough that they might just try. I don't support their cause. For clarity, anyone that's watching for the first time, I don't support their cause at all. But boy, would that be kicking the hornet's nest at a time like this.
I'm going to go out and say there'll be one on Sunday. 100%. These people do not back down. It'll be at least in Melbourne for sure. And it'll come from the guise of, we stand with the Muslim community. We are spitting in the face of the racist Australians. It'll happen.
Oh, you're probably right. Yes, you're probably right.
Sorry.
This is a thank you from Paz Two Wheels. Paz Two Wheels. Thanks for responding to my comment today, Carls. So there you go.
You're welcome.
Ayo Isaac says, Topher, what's your advice for LAFOs, law-abiding firearms owners? For those that don't know the acronym going forward, the ARU is trying to roll out social media to get ahead of the narrative, but boy, are they moving quick. I'm not qualified to give advice, let me be clear. I'm not a firearms owner myself. I don't know the laws and the rules. Make sure that you've joined the relevant shooters unions and so forth. I'm not going to, there's a whole civil war going on in that space. I'm not going to pick a side on that, but make sure you're a member of at least one. Get behind their campaigns. I've been saying for years that shooters need to recruit their friends into the shooting hobby. You need to become a really evangelistic bunch of people to get a lot more people on your side. And at a moment exactly like this one was the reason why I advocated for that. Of course, that horse has bolted. That moment is gone. Excuse me. Sadly, I don't think there's much that can be done at this juncture to stop the federal government ramming through a raft of new restrictions. They're probably going to model them off West Australia. That would be my guess. I think there's going to be caliber restrictions. I think they're definitely going for the number of guns that can be owned by an individual person. The media have made a huge fuss over the fact that he owns 6 guns because the non-shooter doesn't understand the need for different calibers or why you would have a shotgun, a small caliber, a 22 for plinking and having fun and practicing. You might have a larger caliber rifle for taking down larger animals, but then you'll have that and go, actually, this one's too heavy. I'm going to get a lightweight version of this higher caliber rifle because I'm humping it through hills, uphill and down dale looking for deer. Then you might have something for shooting long range for fun because that's how you get your kicks and you want to reach out and hit targets at 500 meters. And before you know it, you've racked up 5-6 guns, and it's your hobby, it's your passion, you like it. And to the non-firearm community person, they sit there and go, who this guy think he's Rambo, like he's only got 2 trigger fingers. How many guns do you need? And they don't sort of understand the hobby aspect of it, or even just the different roles that guns play. So they're definitely going to be going for restrictions on the number of firearms. I think that's been made pretty clear. I think they're going to model it off Western Australia, and I think they're going to come specifically for the straight pull. I think the Adler shotguns and the straight pull rifles, etc. I think they're coming for those, and unfortunately, at this point, I don't think there's much that can be done to stop that. We can work to elect better people to have that reversed in the future, but I don't think we can stop it from happening in the short term.
The biggest problem you face is that collectively Australians hate guns now. They've been conditioned to hate guns. So you've got a vocal majority of Australians who will want action, and the best action they can take right now is to go, we're cracking down on guns. And yet, they keep talking about how this guy had 6 legally. How many illegal guns are currently in the hands of the bikies or the tobacco war I'm trying not to racially profile, but, you know, the people who engaged in the tobacco wars. And,
Yeah.
you know, like we've already heard of people being shot at or shootings in Melbourne recently around the tobacco laws. Like anyone who's suffering under this, like this false idea that there's not guns in this country, they're everywhere. Like the organized crime syndicates use them sparingly. They don't want to draw attention to them.
Yes.
You know, so like, you know, I would dare say there is a lot of very illegal weapons in this country, and they are used, you know, in a way that helps them carry about their business, but it's done very, you know, very quietly, which is why we hear about someone was admitted to hospital with gun wounds and they don't know how.
Yeah.
You know, the guns
And even the
don't
person
fall
who
from the
got shot
sky.
isn't talking about what happened. Yeah.
You know, no one's squeaking. I saw this comment from Phonic Photon. There are Arabs and Muslims, and Arabs are not the problem. I mean, again, like, I just want to say my piece around this. When I say something like we need to have a look at radical Islam, and then I met with you're a racist for saying that. Islam is a religion. It's also a very fundamentalist ideology, and it's not a race. There are plenty of people across the globe. There's 49 Muslim majority countries. Most of these people are Muslim. Most of these people are peaceful and good people. And whether you're talking about the Bedouins or like the Syrians or the Afghanis, there are so many different denominations of Arabs. They were tribal people. They moved around a lot. You know, they are Muslim often not because it was something they chose for themselves. That's where they were born. You want to go up against the Taliban in Afghanistan and be like, I'm going to be a Buddhist. Like, see where that gets you. So this is why, like, when it comes to condemning Islam, I'm not condemning all Muslims. And I get really frustrated when you say something and then all of a sudden you get this whole, like, you're racist. Race is referring to race. It's not referring to an ideology.
Yeah. And this is where, you know, I bang on about this and people get mad at me. The energy you invest into fighting the wrong problem is counterproductive. Like, it's not only a waste of energy, it's taking you further away from actually conquering the real problem. It's one of the reasons why I get fired up about the immigration issue and other things. It's like, if we aim our guns at the wrong target now, you're going to think you've done something and you won't have, and you will have wasted all of that energy. And in the case of the issue with Muslim extremists, Islamic extremists, people who want to use violence to advance their ideology, if we, again, paint with that broad brush and say, well, it's a Muslim problem, then we put offside the vast majority of Muslims who don't share that violent view. And these people are our allies. And again, going back to my friend who's in counterterrorism, there are an enormous number of Muslims who want to be calling out the violent ones amongst them. They know who they are. They can see them. When they bring them to the attention of the authorities, they don't get a thank you. They get a lot of trouble, actually, is how that usually works out for them.
I've got two things I want to show you on X quickly. I'm just going to pull up the first one. Where are we? So Jane Caro, are you familiar with who she is? Journalist? All right. So and I'm showing you guys this because, you know, this is what we're up against. So Jane Caro, she wrote, "It's the guns. Horrified that this awful, hate-filled, racist violence has returned to Australia after 3 decades. Tighten restrictions again now." Now, those of us who, you know, are willing to have the conversation are going to go, guns are inanimate objects. They don't kill people. It's the people holding the guns. And that's the whole thing in America, right? Like, that's the whole standing with the NRA and all the people who are pro Second Amendment. And then you have the Democrats who say it's the guns are killing people. You know, if there are people and whether it's Islam or it's, you know, criminals or it's whoever, if you want to kill someone, you will find what you can to kill them. You know, we look at the Christmas markets over in Europe. They're using cars. They're using cars to kill people. They're using improvised explosive devices. They're using suicide vests. They're using, like, pipe bombs. If people want to kill you, they will find it. So my response to Jane was, guns don't kill people, Jane. Extremists who have been raised on hate and allowed to espouse their hateful beliefs freely in a Western society kill people with guns or bombs or cars or knives. It's not the weapon, it's the ideology. Yet people like you condemn those of us who speak up as racists or Islamophobes whilst you deny objective reality. Fundamentalist Islam is not compatible with Western values. Until we have that conversation, these attacks will continue. And so this is what's going to annoy me right now about everything that's going on. It's going to be all about the guns. This is not about guns. If
No.
if it wasn't guns, it would have been knives or machetes. Like if they want to
Correct.
kill us, they will find something.
It's a crowd of people. It was a crowd of people in a park, and I think this is still true that the deadly, or maybe the Charlie Hebdo attack was bigger. There was do you remember the truck attack? I'm not going to look it up. The truck attack that happened in France. I think it was in Nice. And this guy drove a loaded up truck. He was an Islamic extremist. He drove a loaded up truck through crowds of people. And I think the casualty count was in the 70s or 80s, something like that. It's one of the deadliest mass casualty terror attacks in a Western country ever. You know, I don't know if it's the deadliest, but it's right up there. Far deadlier than anything we've seen in Australia. Carried out with a truck, right? Now, my understanding is the guy actually had guns and other weapons with him in the cab. His plan was to drive the truck until it stopped and he was going to get out and do more damage. And a gendarme took care of him before he had the chance to do that. But actually, the deadliest part of that attack, even if he had jumped out with a gun, the deadliest part of that attack would still have been the bit that he did with the front end of the truck. Everywhere where you can gather people, you can cause harm if you are so inclined.
Well, what G said last night, which I think was a really good point, is like, they start with the shooting, right? They use the guns to start to, you know, fire off some rounds and take out some casualties. And then they wait for the first responders to come. And they had IEDs in the car waiting. They found explosives. And so I imagine if they hadn't been taken out, they would have then got these explosives and tried to blow up the first responders. So it was mass casualties. Thankfully, that didn't happen. But, you know, like the whole thing about the guns thing, like I don't want to have this conversation about guns because we've literally had this conversation about machetes and people have died from knife crime. So
yeah, that's right.
You
know?
All
right. So GBags98 says, I'm a migrant who assimilated as I love Australia. Multiculturalism only works when we enforce the rule of law, have shared values, and zero tolerance for extremist violence or imported hatred. I agree. And it's important to make a distinction between multi-ethnic and multicultural. See, people say multiculturalism has failed, therefore we have to get all the brown people out. It's like, well, hold on. Do you think that your culture is so weak and so ineffective and so undesirable that it cannot possibly be adopted by anyone other than a white person who was born into it? Like a culture that cannot be accepted and adopted and embraced by any human being that goes, hey, that's better. I want that. I'm going to become that. A culture that cannot attract new people to it is a culture that's already lost. So this idea of our culture is better, I agree. Australian culture is amazing. Judeo-Christian values as expressed in the Westminster system with the rule of law and equality before the law, phenomenal. What a time to be alive. I love this country. I love what it stands for. I love what it means to be Australian. But we can share this. This isn't this just because it came from what was white Europe. Yes, it is. It's white culture. That's what it is. That's true. It is. That doesn't mean it can only be adopted and accepted by white people. That's nonsense. That's
Can I play something?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, finish your point and I'll play this because I think this is really important for people to
How
think.
little faith do you have in your own culture and the strength of your own culture that you think that it's only able to be adopted by people with a certain set of a certain amount of melanin in this? Like, I genuinely don't understand how people make that leap from it came from Europe. It came from white Europe. That's true. Therefore, it can only be held by white people. That's nonsense.
I'm going to play you this because I thought this was really good.
People that come here from wherever they do, and rather than doing what they need to do to assimilate into the Australian values, the one that has made the Western world so much better than where we are from, they don't. They do what they need to do to try and change it. And that is not okay. And I'm an African, I'm saying that. I came here for a better life, and it gave me a better life. I've been able to provide jobs for so many people now because I get to work hard because Australia gave me a better life. And so how dare these people do what they do and come here and enforce things that don't belong to this place? If you wanted those things, stay where you came from. There is a lot of people that come here from...
Yeah, and like, so this is why I get really friggin' annoyed when the conversation always gets reduced to race. There are so many amazing people who have migrated here, who don't look white, who are awesome. And I have said this a million times on this podcast, and I'll say it one more time just for those who haven't heard it. I would rather a country that raises people up on merit and inspires people to come here who want to contribute than live in a country full of lazy, regular Joe Schmo white people. I want to go somewhere where we attract the best, where people want to work hard, where people want to build something. That's a country I'd like to live in. I don't give a fuck what you look like. You know, that's what drives me crazy.
And I'll remake a point that sent the NSN absolutely mad when I made this the first time, which is it's not immigrants that have destroyed our country. Immigrants have not driven our inflation. Immigrants have not destroyed our manufacturing base, made our electricity completely unreliable and unaffordable. Immigrants have not handed hundreds of millions of dollars over to foreign countries for foreign wars. Immigrants, so much of what we blame immigrants for, so much of what we say is wrong with Australia right now, and there are issues for sure. Immigrants didn't do that to you. Now, arguably, they made the housing shortage worse. That's true. That one, yep, okay. You can chalk that up in part to immigration. I've done whole videos on that before, talking about over-regulation, the taxation, all that stuff. I won't re-prosecute that now. You can find that in my videos. But yes, arguably, they made your public transport more crowded and they drove up the cost of housing. Those ones, okay, you can pin those up to immigrants. The rest of it, it was done to you. Guess what? By white Europeans, people with last names like Albanese, last names like Turnbull, last names like Rudd, last names like Andrews, right? These are good European white stock. These are the people that fucked our country. These are the people that made your life hard. So again, the government wants us to blame the wrong things. They want us to blame guns for the attack that we saw yesterday. They want us to blame immigrants for the cost of living crisis. Albo just came out saying, oh, we're going to take action on price gouging, even though his own inquiry found no evidence of actual price gouging in the supermarkets. But he's going to change the regulations and save us from price gouging. These are distractions. They're trying to make us believe that they're doing something. Blame anyone but the government. The government is what's wrong with this country. And when it comes to immigration, there's a very, very simple fix. And we saw that with the video that you just played. We saw that with some of the comments that I've put up over the course of tonight from various immigrants contributing on this show. If we change the incentives, we will change who comes here, right? All we need to do is say, no welfare, no free lunch. You got multiple wives? We don't care. You pick one. Tell us which one you've got. We're not paying for all your kids. You're not bringing all that stuff here and being a parasite on the Australian taxpayer. If you're not contributing, you're out. Change that incentive. Simple as that. And all of a sudden, a lot of people will self-deport. We can say to them, hey, listen, we will pay for your airfare back to where you came from. But that's the last time you'll ever set foot in Australia. We're cutting off all the welfare. We're cutting off all the niceties. If you get found guilty of a crime, you're gone. If you don't pay your way and you get into trouble, you're gone. The last thing that the Australian taxpayer will spend on you is an airfare back to where you came from, and you're never coming back. And at that point, a lot of the problems will self-deport. And the people that we do want, the ones that really did genuinely come here to make a better life, not to take a better life, there's a huge difference. Right? The ones that came here to make a better life, they'll stay because they see the opportunity and the value and they're willing to put the work in. The ones that are here to take a better life, they're gone. And all of a sudden, we won't be talking about immigration anymore.
Yeah, and it's the same issue that the US is facing. There's so many people who have migrated there who are there for the American dream and they want to participate. And then you've got people who are running over the border who are getting access to all of these things that not even regular citizens, taxpayers get access. Can I show you something from Annika Wells now?
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to read that super chat quickly?
Okay. Yeah. So I lived in a South American country for 12 months. Gringos, which is they're quite racist. They're not willing. They're not afraid to call you a whitey. Gringos cannot obtain a firearms license in that country. Period. Not allowed. Never. How soon after entry into this country for a firearms license? Criminals have them without licenses in any country, I would guess. But yeah, this is what I'm wondering with this dad who apparently never got PR, never became a resident, never became never got PR, never became a citizen, yet had a gun license for 15 years. Like, so that math ain't math, and something's off.
You gotta wonder, is there some like money under the table or something, like, and this is where conspiracies do start to run crazy because it doesn't make sense. There is definitely information missing there. And if you don't arm the Australian public with the correct information, like if ASIO don't come out going, hey, this was a clerical error, we fucked up, this is on us. And they won't, by the way. They're not going to say that.
Yeah, they won't. No.
But you are going to have people who right now are just going to start, going through the conspiracy route. And the thing that really frustrates me to say, and I want to say this before I pull up this thing from Annika, is that the amount of people who are now blaming Israel for this attack, like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I need to say this point. This is really important because I know everyone wants to blame Mossad and it's some kind of like global psyop and someone's up there with the puppet strings. But have a look at how many isolated attacks there have been. Is every single one of these a false flag? Is every single terrorist attack done by Mossad to try and siphon off more sympathy for the Jews? Are all of these senseless deaths done under the guise of Islam really actually paid for by Mossad purely to push the Jewish agenda? Come on.
Yeah.
Like,
it's insane.
We all love a conspiracy theory, but just put some fucking common sense into your brain. Come on.
The thing I love about it is the same person will agree that a government couldn't organize a chook raffle, like they couldn't organize a root in a brothel, but then they'll also believe that the government has organized some extravagant, complicated, multi-part conspiracy that involves thousands of people keeping their secrets and all kinds of logistical nonsense, and yet somehow the government consistently, reliably pulls off these kinds of false flag operations. How about the people in power know how to leverage an opportunity? They don't have to make tragedies happen. Tragedies happen, right? The people in power that you're looking at going, they were ready. They're pouncing. That must mean that they did it. No. It means that they knew that sooner or later something was going to happen. They know that they want an anti-gun agenda. They know that they want to go through another round of gun bans in Australia. And they knew that if they waited long enough, they'd get their opportunity. This is it. It doesn't mean they organized it.
That's exactly like what they say. Never let a good tragedy go to waste, PR-wise.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
I want to bring this up. This is important because we talk about this a lot. This is from Annika Wells. She's also the second stooge in the whole E-Safety Commission and pushing the under-16s ban. This is her response today. Last night, the E-Safety Commissioner stood up on call team to monitor what's been shared online. If you see violent, harmful, or distressing footage or photos online, don't share it further, even if your intention is to help or raise awareness. You may cause distress to others. Keep a note of that. Report graphic material to the platform to help get it removed quickly. If the material is not removed or if it is seriously harmful, you can report it to eSafety. Now, a couple of things. What determines that? What parameters are that? Just because you find it offensive doesn't mean I find it offensive. And if we can have someone like Abby Chatfield, again, I'm going to keep bringing it up, say that she calls for the assassination of Donald Trump, and you guys say that's fine, she's perfectly allowed to say that, then I'm going to say to you, you will watch what our unchecked migration does to Bondi Beach when 15 people get slaughtered. I'm sorry, you don't get to pick one and not have the other. And I actually think, and I think it's important, and I said this when we had that week of the Ukrainian girl that got stabbed, Charlie Kirk's murder, and the young boy who got, the two young boys who got attacked by machetes and bled out on the streets. That was 3 murders that I physically watched in 1 week. That is distressing. Unfortunately, that is the reality of the world we are currently living in. And like, not to be cruel, but what do you think people who live in fucking war-torn countries are seeing every day?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. What a privileged position to think that you can be sheltered from the evilness of humanity, right? You look back at you look back at what happened in World War II, and whether you were British or French or German. I mean, Germans. Let's not even talk about those. Or like one of the Bolsheviks. You saw death all day, every day. It was a reality. It is a very privileged position that we are currently in, that we don't see death at the level that we do, so that when we do see it, it should be jarring. I'm sorry, seeing those bodies lying on the ground in Bondi should invoke this visceral reaction in you. And I think you should see it. I think sponging it away from the internet and hiding it is a total disservice to the Australian public.
100%. Now, can I go one step further? Because it is now December the 15th, 5 days after the under-16 social media ban. So according to Annika Wells, there's meant to be no children on the internet anymore. They're not on social media. And so surely we can have an adult conversation amongst adults, can't we? Or are they going to try and have their cake and eat it too? Kick all the kids off and then treat the adults like kids? Because that's what it looks like she's trying to do.
And I want to play one more clip. This is Marine Faruqi. Let's have a listen to what she's got to say. Because remember, she lectured us white people on racism today a couple of months ago.
You have been
Shame on you.
Shame on you.
You're a disgrace.
Where there have been calls for intifada and death to the IDF. How does this lead to anything else other than the terror attack that we saw here last night?
We are here today to give respect.
Do you
To
regret
show our
being
love.
at those pro-Palestinian protests that have only fueled anti-Semitism?
Today is about heart and humanity for those who have lost their loved ones, for those who have been injured.
Are you surprised? You can't possibly be surprised that your actions have been among those that have led to this.
I'm actually amazed anyone's even asking these questions.
To the Jewish community?
I am here for supporting the Jewish community and everyone else
Would you like to apologize?
who has suffered what has happened here yesterday.
You have been...
Shame on you.
Shame on you.
Yeah.
I will say, and I've said this before on previous podcasts, I am really buoyed by the tenacity of the Australian media. It's nowhere near where it needs to be, but
some of
certainly some of them are starting to find their fucking kahunas. You know, we had Natalie Barr on Sunrise, or today, whatever one she's on, really throw it to Albanese. You got people yesterday who were talking about how you recognize the Palestinian state. I can't remember who the journalist was, but he really held Albanese to the fire yesterday. Now with Marine Faruqi, yes, it's Sky News, but these are questions these politicians are always able to run around because the media has run this like protection racket. Right. So you think of the ABC and how they completely like frame the story to protect the politicians that they're friendly with. Now, all of a sudden, you know, I keep saying slaughter because I think it's important. When you see this now on our home soil, I think a lot of, I believe, and this is my assumption, I think a lot of reporters are going, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, correct. All righty, we've got to keep...
Sorry, on Marine Faruqi, sorry, just one more point. She stood on the bridge next to the man holding up the Ayatollah of Iran.
Yeah, the Ayatollah of Iran. Yeah.
She was there. And this is the thing. I will say this. These people need to be faced with reality of what they were cheering for. I think a part of her probably never thought a terrorist attack, let alone one done by Pakistanis, would happen on Australian soil.
Yeah.
Because you would, and I'm going to say this, you are so freaking privileged in this country that you can get up in Canberra and talk about racism and privilege and colonization. But when the war comes to our shores, after you've been cheering for it, you don't get to look away and you don't get to have your tail between your fucking legs. So every single one of these, whether it's Payman, Lydia Thorpe, Marine Faruqi, whoever, hold their tail to the fire. This is what they stood for. This is what they cheered for.
And don't let them weasel out of it. Don't let them weasel out of it. All right. Marcus Walker, the government is purely to blame here for letting known people of interest to even conjure this plan. It's not the gun laws. It's the inability of ASIO and the lax attitude of the government to blame the common person. I think it's an unwillingness to hold individuals accountable for individual actions. I know I bang on about that, but what we're seeing is a bunch of different interest groups trying to pivot the blame onto other groups. You know, each side is saying, as a group, you're guilty as a group, you're guilty as a group, you're guilty as a group. No, individuals take action. Individuals take action. Groups can create an environment. That's true. But a group is nothing more than a conglomeration of individuals. And we need to hold the individuals. When Tova's screen goes to sleep. Yeah, it's got a 2-hour timer on it. We need to hold individuals accountable. We need to get much better at doing that. We need to be much more proactive about doing that. We need to recognize that once someone is genuine, once a reasonable person would look at someone's actions or someone's words and say, a reasonable person would be afraid as a result of this, a reasonable person would regard that as a threat to their safety, then at that point, that person's crossed a line. They've crossed a threshold. This is why, for example, the nurses that were caught on camera saying that they'd killed or that they would kill Jews in the hospital, in the Sydney hospital where they worked, etc. That's a violation of free speech. Not because they've said something you're not allowed to say that. No, you have put people reasonably in fear. Jewish people will say, well, I can't go to hospital now. My mum's about to go in for whatever. Right? You've created reasonable fear and you've crossed a threshold at that point. And Marine Faruqi, I think, is guilty of doing that in some of the actions and speeches that she's given. So We need to get through some of these because we're 2 hours in and we've got a bunch more super chats. Thank you for the fact check, Daniel. I appreciate it. Turns out 26 days of peace. I was wrong. I thought it was only one. Turns out it's 26. Google says longest peace period, 26 days in 1945, 2nd of September to the 29th of September. Yeah, didn't take long for the wars to start again. That's unfortunately just third world nature. People from these war-torn third world countries that are imported here only know of violence and bloodshed. It's all they've lived and known, and to bring them here is only going to cause problems. I would regard that as an oversimplification. I've known actually a number of people from war-torn countries. I knew a family when I was a kid, a family that came to my church for a while from Ghana, and he'd been a government minister, and his kids had been wrapped up in all kinds of stuff, and they fled when the government was overthrown in a revolution there, got out with their lives, and they came to Australia. Some of the loveliest, gentlest people that I've ever known. Yeah, if you're getting the fighters, if we're plucking the fighters out of those civil war situations, then yes, that's probably true.
I would say to this, you could apply that to the Vietnamese when the Vietnam War was on. There's two, and this is the thing. You could say that about the Cambodians during the time of Pol Pot. You could say that about the Syrians right now with ISIS. I
to
think
be clear, most of the time you'd be wrong. Right? That's the point that you're making is not that this actually applies, but that you could say this about those people. And for most of those people, you'd be wrong.
There are civilian casualties under these extremist regimes in their own country. They're not all on the same side. This is my point. In Syria, there is a Syrian who detested Assad and also hate ISIS. Saying that we can't take people in from third world war-torn countries is an oversimplification. There's a lot of people who are genuinely wanting a better life. The issue is we don't vet them. The issue is we allow the people of fighting age and predominantly a lot of men to come in. And this is the thing. This is down to our migration policy, right? We allow people into this country who shouldn't be here. That man from Pakistan that was involved in Bondi should not be here, especially if his son is on the ASIO watch list. He wasn't even a permanent resident. So this is the thing. There might be people from India, from Afghanistan. Would you honestly say that to a 9-year-old girl who's about to be married off to her first cousin who's 50 in Afghanistan, who's not allowed an education, who's about to have her genitals mutilated, who's about to be raped for the rest of her life, that she can't come to Australia because she's part of a hateful regime? Or would you look at that poor fucking 9-year-old and go, Jesus, I want to protect that child?
You're the victim. Yeah.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, we'll go back to that one. It's not the gun laws, or it's not the guns or the knives. That's our problem. It is our political apathy, 100%.
Yes, I agree.
Our gun laws have never been sensical to anyone who knows guns. The US has a problem with over-medicated kids, yes, and a consistent desire to be famous, yes. This incident has shown that the problem isn't guns, it is mindset. Yeah, a fact I love to bring out is, you alluded to it earlier, Carly, there's over 1 million illegal guns in Australia. There's 4 million registered ones and at least another 1 million unregistered ones, which by definition are in the hands of criminals. So there's 1 million guns in the hands of criminals in this country. The fact is, tangent time. I had a big debate with someone about terrorism in the wake of 9/11, and they were trying to say
Stop. Time out.
I know where this is going. All right, I'm sorry. Apparently the radio edit is not good enough. You need the full thing, the full symphonic.
You don't do tangent time on this podcast and half-ass it. Who are you?
I'm sorry.
You've changed.
Who I am is sorry. I am sorry.
You will be sorry, and you will sing that goddamn song now.
I'm trying to start. You're interrupting. Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Tangent time. Razzle dazzle. Okay.
How dare you rob us of this opportunity?
Are we good now? We good? Can I continue? I was having an argument with someone in the wake of, not immediately, it was a few years after 9/11, and I was saying that a lot of the airport security is just theater, right? It's just there to make us feel better about getting on a plane. It's not actually saving anyone's life. And this person was insisting that there were, if it weren't for the airport security, planes are getting blown up every other week. And my brain made a little connection in this moment here in the heat of that conversation that has served me well ever since. And I said, well, then why aren't they blowing up the buses? Why aren't they blowing up the trains? Why, if you really wanted a mass casualty event, you wanted to take out more people than one aeroplane, wait until those security lines are, this is Carl's in pageant mode. Scary. Wait till those security lines are absolutely full. You can walk in there with an entire suitcase packed with whatever bangy stuff you want, and then say, oh, I really need to go to the loo. Fuck off out of the line, leaving your bag, right? You didn't even have to go down with the plane. You have to pass through security. At the time, we were not far from Flinders Street Station, and there's an area there where the road gets very close to the level of the train tracks. I'm like, go and hijack a petrol tanker and then drive it the wrong way into one of the tunnels and have a head-on with a train in a petrol tanker, right? You want to cause a mass casualty. Like, there are so many much more creative ways to do it. But you think that there are people who would blow themselves up on a plane if they could, who aren't going to do that. Right? If they're going to do this and that's denied because the security is so essential and so effective, they're going to do this, right? They blow buses up in Tel Aviv, right? They do these sorts of things in other parts of the world. We're not seeing that here. Why? Well, because they're not going to blow up the planes. Then they don't have the design. Now, that was 20 years ago. Yeah. Unfortunately, the world has changed since then, and we do have people with that kind of a desire here in Australia, and we saw that literally just yesterday. But even in amongst these tragedies, I think it's worth just stopping and actually going, this is representative of a vanishingly small number of people. We can't ignore them. I'm not saying we can just pretend they don't exist and Pollyanna our way through this. We can't. But let's not lose perspective.
Just on the airline. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to say, this is representative of a vanishingly small number of people. That was the end of my point.
Yeah. Just on the airline thing, I mean, those arbitrary rules, they are just performative at this point. I'll give you an example. Most airports in Australia are now rolling out those ones. Remember when we had to figure out whether it was laptop in, laptop out? You know, like, oh, which one, laptop in, laptop out, because every x-ray was different. Now, most of the ones that I'm going through, it's just put your suitcase into the plastic tub and it goes through and then you get your scan. I flew up to Melbourne and to Sydney and back on Jetstar. I didn't change anything. I was there less than 24 hours. I had everything in my little wheelie case. And I went up there with a deodorant and a little mini hairspray. And I put them in my shoes because I remember here at home going, I don't have the cap that goes on the top. And I put them inside my shoes, not because I was worried, more because I was like, I don't want them to accidentally press in my suitcase because I wanted my deodorant, I didn't want them to accidentally discharge. Anyway, fine. Didn't get stopped in Melbourne, no dramas, off you go, up you go. Came back through Sydney, I get pulled over, my suitcase gets pulled over, they're pulling everything out. They're like, you've got an aerosol in here. I'm like, yeah, my deodorant. And they're like, you can't have this. And she's like, bloody holding it in my face like this. And I'm like, what do you mean? I brought that up from Melbourne. And she's like, no, it doesn't have a lid on it. I'm like, didn't have a lid on it when I brought it up from Melbourne either. And she's like, no. And she threw it in the bin. I'm sitting there going, come on. What the fuck am I going to do with a deodorant can? Seriously. It won't let me take the lighter. It's not like I can, firebomb you. What would my can of deodorant without the lid on do that is different to having that little plastic lid on it?
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. It's the lid that's actually dangerous. I said the same thing when they were snapping the little nail files off of nail clippers. Like, I'm not afraid of a terrorist that's sitting in the chair going, damn it, they took the nail file off me. I can't take over the plane anymore. Like, that is not a terrorist that I'm afraid of. But it's performative. It is purely about making you feel good.
They did used to take my duct tape off me. So as a photographer, we always carry around duct tape or gaff tape. And I always forget it's in my handbag every single time. I'm like, okay. Yes, I could.
Little bit creepy that you had duct tape, a punnet of strawberries and a condom all packed together. Like, it's just things got weird. It just, I can understand them being a little concerned.
I'm a woman of interesting tastes. What can I say?
I don't want to talk to G about that. So we have a good question here. And speaking of immigrants and questions around all such things, Carly, shall we update people with what's going on with the first birthday party?
I can update you because we have been debating this. And first thing, I have called many of these venues, and because of our RSA laws in Australia, in Victoria, we are not allowed to hire a pub-like venue and have you guys go and buy your own alcohol without us paying for your food. And each one of these establishments that I have inquired at won't allow us to pay anything less than $30 per head for food. And we don't want you guys to have to pay $100 for your ticket to be able to cover everything. So now I am looking at town halls, I'm looking at RSLs. But our RSA laws are a little bit tricky.
I want to go back a step. I'm going to put you on the spot here.
You can say it.
Because I went through this whole process myself first. And found a bunch of venues. I was looking a bit closer to the CBD, found a whole heap of venues. I think we're going to get 200 people along to the birthday party. So a lot of places are like, oh, we have 80, we can fit 80 people. It's like, I'm sorry, that's not going to do. And ran into the same problems, the RSA. Now, technically, what the RSA requires is that food has to be available. It's the venues that are interpreting that as you have to buy one of our food packages off us because that's more profitable for them. It's guaranteed. They know exactly what quantity of food to have, how many kitchen staff, all the rest of it. I found a venue that I think looks fantastic. It's in sort of Hawthorne, sort of inner eastern suburbs. Access might not be ideal, but it's not terrible. And it fits 200 people. And I spoke to the owner. And she seemed very accommodating, and she was happy for people to buy their own drinks at their bar prices and to have food available. So people could just order food, and she would take the risk on trying to figure out what she was going to have available and all the rest of it. And I asked you to go and check the place out just as a final check. I was super happy. I was ready to book, but I went, you know what? I'll just get Carly to check the place out. Carly, you say you're not a racist. But can I just say, rather than putting you on the spot for your alleged racism, the attitude difference, you've got to acknowledge the attitude difference from an immigrant who owned this venue that I found versus the Aussie-owned venues that you've been beating your head against the wall because you didn't love the venue that I found. The attitude difference is really striking.
Okay, I'm going to caveat this with I read our comments every week, and now in the light of what's just happened, I think it's an even worse idea, but I will say this. The establishment is in Hawthorne, which is a fucking pain in the ass to get to for everyone, but whatever. This establishment is owned by an immigrant who is Muslim, and most of her employees are Muslim. Many of them wear the hijab. And given, prior to Bondi, how unimpressed people seem to be about Islam at the moment, I thought the worst thing we could do is organize a birthday event at a function venue like that where we are openly discussing political things. Because remember, the staff will be listening. And I don't want us to be flagged as some kind of fucking Nazi gathering. And I was looking at a potential PR disaster.
They serve alcohol. They serve alcohol, so they can't be that serious about it. The price is right. The location's not terrible. You're looking down Bayside, which for some people is better and for other people is going to be worse. And did I mention the price is right? So we ran into an impasse.
But my concern is, and even worse now, given reading tonight's comments, I don't want to cause any issues for both the venue and for our people watching. So I was just looking at it from a PR perspective, but I am also quite conscious that if we are going to have the Oddcast first birthday party and talk about politics, we should probably find people who are sympathetic to people who aren't extreme progressive left. So I'm just saying,
well,
something
that's also
that we need to be thoughtful of.
So as a result, we don't have a venue, which means we don't have a date, and it's now definitely not going to be early in January. It's going to be in February if we're lucky at this current rate. And I've kind of washed my hands of it a little bit and said, I found a venue that I think was fine. I don't think there would be any issues. But Carly, you're a part of the team, and this is your podcast as well as mine. And so if it matters this much to you, then over to you. So
I'm reading the comments.
That's where
The comments, I'm reading them. Look, no, when it comes to things like this, and this is important, and I am quite risk adverse at times, particularly with stuff like this, is we have a podcast that's gaining in popularity, and Topher and I give you guys our opinions all day, every day. Unless we are very conscious of who is coming, if there is a potential for something to happen that is unsavory, guess what? That falls on me and Topher. Things get difficult. We don't have security. Like, you know, you guys can laugh and say, oh, Carly's been PC. These are real things, you know, like it gets to a point where there's people in there who want to say horrible things and then there's a fight. Like, you know, I'm sorry, I'm being realistic. I don't want our podcast and what we do to get derailed by a couple of people who want to cause trouble. That's just my opinion.
Well, in terms of who's going to cause trouble, apparently it's going to be me. I'll get you all kicked out.
That's just your face. Like, no, not this fight.
Sorry, you were a bit too quick with that one. You had that one ready. You've been waiting for a chance to get that one out.
I'm just saying, like,
all right.
Oh, thanks, Peter. Jesus. At least you're honest.
Way to caveat your agreement with her. I hate women, but she's got a point.
This one's all right.
All right. So that's where things are at. The answer is yes, we are trying to make it happen. Australian
Does anyone know any good locations that would allow for 200-ish people where we could set up the podcast? I mean, like, I'm being honest, having a political podcast in a venue, in Melbourne, for God's sakes, not everyone's going to like want that. And that's fair. Yeah. You know, they're a private establishment. They get to determine who comes in.
Sure. But essentially, we're looking to seat 200 people. I think there needs to be food and drink available because our Wednesday or our big podcast, our in-person podcast, is typically 3 hours long, sometimes 3.5. So I think we need a bar. We need food to be available. We need people to be able to get in and out to toilets without disrupting the entire event. And we need it to not come at an extraordinary cost. I mean, my aim was to have like a $20 entry fee for everyone that would just cover the venue hire, and then you buy your own drinks and pay for your own food. That was my aim.
Let us know in the chats, guys, how much would you be willing to pay for the ticket? Because we were trying to keep the overheads down, but if you guys would be willing to pay, say, $50 for a ticket, that would change the location
drastically. And to be clear, the tickets are just going to cover costs. We're not trying to make money on the tickets, but how much of a cost would you be willing to cover, I guess, is the question. All right. We need to smash through a few more super chats. So you tally those up in your head, Carly, and just keep an eye on that. So Rita Panahi dubbed Annika Wells the Minister for Ski Trips today. Perfect title. That is pretty funny. That's Rita does some good stuff. Ayo Isaac says, thanks for all you do. Thank you. Thank you for the support. This is interesting. Shooters Fishers Farmers Party just put out a good statement stating the government failures to not use the systems in place for law-abiding firearms owners. There are a lot of things in place to keep an eye on LAFOs, evidence of mental health issues, evidence of extremism, that sort of stuff. And it seems extraordinary to me that would have all been missed in this guy's case. Patrick, this guy in Geelong got arrested with 36 guns a few weeks ago. I saw some photos of that. I didn't do a story on it. I saw some photos and I went, are they airsoft? Or like gel blasters, like because when the news reports them, they don't make a distinction. They can pick up 36 realistic looking water pistols and they'll call them guns, right? But those things, I don't know, were they actual like proper pew-pews or were they something less? I don't know. Daniel Moore.
Sorry to interject. A couple of people are suggesting we go regional. I understand why you guys are saying that, but then you add all sorts of costs to people having to travel and then they need accommodation. Like we're trying to stay near Melbourne or like a capital city so that, you know, makes it easier for people.
Look, I think this first one needs to be Melbourne. And I no disrespect to a lot of you are not in Melbourne, but a lot of my followers that have come across are from Melbourne. A lot of Carly's followers that have come across here are from Melbourne. We have a majority Melbourne support base, so I think we need to kind of honour that and have the first birthday there. In future, we could change.
We'll do a tour, but everyone seems to be of the opinion that $50 sounds about reasonable, so I'll keep that in mind.
All right, so a $50 target.
That changes things dramatically, by the way.
Yeah, that loosens things. So all right. This wasn't supposed to happen. We were promised safety and freedom of speech in exchange for our gun rights. What an absolute lie. Yep. Never give up your rights for freedom. You will end up with neither. Your plan is sound, Topher. I assume this is to do with changing the incentives. Now, how do we make this plan a reality? The problem is getting worse. It needs to get beyond words and into action. I agree. I think broadly speaking, ironically, One Nation are actually probably the party that are closest to being in a position to be able to implement something resembling my plan. They will use quotas, which I disagree with. I think you just change the incentives and from there you're good. But what they will do is change the incentives. They will fix that problem. And we know that the Liberal and the Labor parties won't. So ironically, as much as I actually, their immigration policy is one of my strongest areas of disagreement with the One Nation party, ironically, in terms of parties that have any realistic opportunity to move the needle, they're probably the ones that are the most likely to get there. Carly, did there used to be one extra line in Tangent Time?
Mm-hmm.
Tangent time, tangent time, tangent time, tangent time.
No.
Was it not always
No.
that?
There was 5. There was tangent time, tangent time, tangent time, tangent time, tangent time.
My mind is
That's how it
blown.
used to
I rewrote my own song and I didn't even realize. Well,
Yeah,
cancel
I
it, one.
actually, I did think this myself, and I was like, no, it's your song. I can't interject and be like, excuse me. Maybe I should have.
Well, you are the published rock star. Let's not forget.
I am.
You enjoyed that a little too much. So cancel it, one. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I promise on Wednesday's podcast, the last for the year, by the way, Wednesday's podcast is the last oddcast for 2025. I will return to the glory days of the original version of the Tangent Time song. That is a promise from me to you.
Tries to get out of it on a Monday night. Outrageous.
Is it me, or is the evil acts of plausible deniability in Australia on the rise? Evil acts of plausible deniability. That's a reference that I know what plausible deniability is, but I'm just not quite sure what you're referring to there, Red Pilled. Sorry, but I don't know. Okay. Baz says, I'll bite. Who wants to do that, Topher? What is the founding document, the common thread? I'm assuming this is on the immigration stuff. Baz has been hot on that topic tonight. I'm slightly confused by the question. Sorry.
I think we'll probably wrap it up soon so that everyone can go off and enjoy their Monday night.
Yes. 2.25 hours is a long time for one of the Monday night chats, but I think tonight we had some heavy stuff we needed to get through. So anything
haven't
else?
eaten, which is why I was so spicy. So you've now seen Hangry Carls and Angry Carls combined.
Hangry Carls, I see. Well, look, we're going to wind it up. So thank you all. We've got 2,333 people watching right now. So thank you everyone for joining us. I think that's a new record for the show for all the wrong reasons. But thank you. And it is an honor and a privilege for both of us, and I'm going to speak for you, Carls, as well as myself, to be in a position where we are people that you turn to for some sense in a world that's gone mad. And we are deeply grateful. That is a humbling and a terrifying thing, and I hope that we've brought you some sanity tonight in amongst it all. Carls?
I will say as well, like, yes, I agree with you, but I am not someone who has been through media training. Topher maybe a little bit more than me. I see often people go, oh, you should do this, you should do this. Like, this is honestly, I mean, we've said this a million times, but this podcast is literally just two mates chatting to each other. It was never meant to be anything more than that. Like, we're reading you the news, we're giving you our opinions, we get heated, we disagree. But I think this is very normal. And I think this is what's actually missing in the country. I think the second it becomes super professional and we're doing ad reads and, it's all sort of tightened up to appeal to advertisers, it will no longer be the valuable vessel that it is. So I hope you guys keep that in mind. And not to apologize for me getting angry, but, like, that's real. That's not a put on. That's not, a bit. That's how I feel. And I think the issue is with Australians, for too long, we have suffered under political correctness where we're not allowed to speak or say how we feel or show those emotions as raw as they are. And I'm grateful that you guys tune in and allow me the space to vent that frustration and don't make me feel evil or, racist for doing so.
Have you been leaking secrets about our final show?
I haven't said shit. I've done nothing.
I hope to see you dress up for the occasion. Maybe. Stay tuned. Don't miss it.
I know there's a surprise, but I won't say what it is.
There might be a little bit of that. All right, guys, thank you so much. Head over to sofafield.com to grab t-shirts, caps, and stickers. Stickers are selling really well. Thanks, guys, for the support, spreading all the slogans. And Carly, thank you for having the idea of doing stickers. Head over to Carl's Day Soda. Well, hang on, before we get to the coffee.
Oh, Carl's Day Soda.
Head over to Carl's Day Soda. Grab the AI masterclass. It was fantastic. Well worth doing. I've dramatically improved how I'm using Grok since taking the masterclass. I still haven't started using anything other than Grok, but I have dramatically improved how I'm using Grok, and I'm getting a lot more value out of it. And it's actually.
Sorry, I was going to say, I'm going to do a follow-up with a deep dive on ChatGPT and other things to really get out and get the best out of it. So if anyone's interested in that, that'll be coming in the new year.
So guys, head to Carl's Day Soda and head to, I can't point to it. Can you point to it again, please? Coffee. Buy us a coffee. You can become a friend of the show, become a regular supporter so that we can pay our bills and do more stuff with the Oddcast.
And with that, guys, with the coffee and stuff like that, I know everyone accuses us of grifting, but so long as we have that, we don't have to take on advertisers, and then we aren't beholden to people who will try and have editorial control of what we say. The second that happens, I imagine we will have to change the direction of the podcast. So, thank you firstly for any support, but also please share it, tell people to watch it, get the name out there. That's important. But can I just show you something really quickly? Because this just arrived today.
Okay.
I'm being an influencer. Do you like that?
Nice. Yeah.
That's my cards, and they came in their hard case with their little.
I'm confused. I thought you had them already.
No, I had the prototype. So this is the final product, and it's like a hard case.
Nice.
And look how schmick they look.
They look fantastic. So you didn't have them for your expo?
No, I just had a prototype. They were like in a paper box, and they were just done on a short run. This is the final product. So they came today, and it's really cool to hold something that you built out of nothing.
Built out of
Sorry
nothing.
to be an influencer. That's very annoying, I know.
Yeah. Alrighty, guys. Thank you for watching. We will see you on Wednesday. Bye.